Council President, members, and guests, we are live.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. We're going to get started now. I'd like to welcome you to the public hearing and the public meeting of the City Council Committee of the Whole. State law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make this remote hearing possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committee are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearing, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Mr. Christmas, will you please call the roll to take attendance, and members that are present, please indicate so to make sure that your image is displayed on the screen. Christmas, call the roll.
Council Lady Bass.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues in the City of Philadelphia.
Good morning.
Council Lady Brooks.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues in the City of Philadelphia.
Good morning.
Councilman Dom.
Good morning, Council President and colleagues in the City of Philadelphia.
Good morning.
Council Lady Gautier.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues in Philadelphia. Present.
Good morning.
Council Lady Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Philadelphia, the city of sisterly love.
Good morning.
Councilman Green.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, City Council tech staff. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and we're looking forward to a good conversation this morning.
Good morning.
Council Lady Gill.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Good morning.
Councilman Heenan. Councilman Johnson. Councilman Jones.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Philadelphia.
Good morning. Good morning.
Councilman O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Councilman O.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Council Lady Parker.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Philadelphia.
Good morning.
Council Lady Quinones Sanchez. Councilman Squilla.
Good morning, Council President, colleagues, present.
Good morning.
Councilman Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Councilman Clark.
And good morning. I want to thank you all very much. And our quorum has been established. This is the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding resolutions number 210-098, 210-099, 210-100, 210-101, 210-102, 210-103, and bill number 210-074. Mr. Christmas, would you please read the title of the resolution?
Resolution 210-098, appointing Chris Barnes to the Board of Directors for the South Street Head House District. Resolution 210-099, appointing Katrina Johnston Zimmerman to the Board of Directors for the South Street Head House District. Resolution 210-100, appointing Adam Zakin to the Board of Directors for the South Street Head House District. Resolution 210-101, appointing Allison Harvey Hinman to the Board of Directors for the South Street Head House District. Resolution 210-102, appointing Monica Thompson to the Board of Directors for the South Street Head House District. And finally, Resolution 210-103, appointing Adam Shapiro to the Board of Directors for the South Street Head House District.
Thank you, Mr. Christmas. Before we begin to hear the testimony from the witnesses today, everyone who has been invited to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. So by continuing to be in the hearing, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to indicate they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this particular purpose. Mr. Christmas, will you please call the first witness we had to testify this morning on resolutions number 210, 098, 210, 099, 210, 100, 210, 101, 210, 102, and 210, 103.
Our first witness is Mr. Mike Harris, Executive Director, South Street Head House District.
Thank you. Good morning. Are you connected and ready to proceed?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Michael Harris. I'm the Executive Director of the South Street Head House District.
Thank you.
Good morning, honorable members of City Council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak very briefly on the series of resolutions appointing new board members to the South Street Head House District. As I mentioned, my name is Mike Harris, and I serve as the Executive Director of the organization. By way of background, the South Street Head House District is the second oldest business improvement district, or BID, in Philadelphia, having been established by City Council in 1992 under the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Act. For over 27 years, the South Street Head House District has worked to make the commercial corridors along South Street and 4th Street Fabric Row vibrant, safe, clean, and inviting. The bid was reauthorized by City Council in 2018 to run at least through 2027, which is approaching faster than we think, right? The South Street Head House District is governed by an independent board of directors approved by the City Council and made up of property owners, business owners, residents, and interested stakeholders. Today, we are seeking your support for the appointment of 6 new board members to the South Street Head House District. The nominated appointments include, in alphabetical order, Christopher Barnes, a small business owner of Lucky's Last Chance in Manayunk and Queen Village; Allison Hinben Harvey, a property owner in the district; Katrina Johnston Zimmerman, a researcher, resident, and owner of Think It Urban Group; Adam Shapiro, a resident of Queen Village and an attorney; Monica Monique Thompson, a small business owner on Fabric Row, owner of Oxymoron Studio; and Adam Zakin, who's a property owner and the developer of the newly opened Sonder Queen Hotel at 5th and Bainbridge Streets. All appointees are interested, engaged, and motivated to serve on the bid board and to make the South Street corridor even better for Philadelphia. I thank you for your consideration and support, and please let me know if I'm able to answer any questions or provide further information.
Mr. President, I believe you're muted.
I'm sorry. Do we have any questions or comment for this witness? There being none, I want to thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mr. Christmas, do we have anyone else to testify in this resolution?
No, Mr. President.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Okay. There being no further questions from members of the committee, no other witnesses to testify, we're going to move on. Mr. Christmas, can you please read the title of Bill number 210074?
An ordinance repealing Chapter 21-1200 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Police Advisory Board and replacing it with a new Chapter 21-1200 that reconstitutes and renames the board as the Citizen Police Oversight Commission, and as authorized by the charter provides for the commission's appointment, the powers and duties of the commission, and the manner in which the commission and other officers, employees, and agencies shall fulfill their respective responsibilities with respect to the commission, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before we call our first witness, the chair recognizes Councilman Jones for remark.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. There are times in history when you can see a thing needs change, but you do not have the ability to change it. There are other times in history when you see a thing that needs changing, and you do have the ability to make that change. In Philadelphia today, this is that time. Walter Wallace Jr., David Jones, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Dante Demetrius Wright, Eric Gardner, Rayshawn Brooks, Sandra Bland, Stefan Clark, Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, and Tanisha Anderson. I want to thank you, Mr. President, and my colleagues for your commitment to the advancement of this legislation. And I want to thank the 508,000 voters who affirmed the need to establish an independent Citizens Police Oversight Commission, and all of the stakeholders who we've heard from that have given input, and from the speakers that we will hear testify today. I want to especially thank criminal justice reform activist, former Philadelphia Eagle Malcolm Jenkins, and WNBA basketball player Natasha Cloud for their ongoing advocacy and testimony here today. The Citizens Police Oversight legislation is the result of years of hard work to answer the call of our residents across Philadelphia to create a commission that will increase police oversight and transparency. As co-chair of the Committee on Public Safety and co-chair of the Committee on Criminal Justice Reform, I've come to realize that public safety and safety itself means different things to different people. To the individual that's riding home at 2 in the morning and is stopped by a police officer, it means the ability to be treated with dignity and respect and to return home to their families. For the police officer making that stop, it means the safety of performing their duty and returning home after shift to their families. I have attended we have attended too many police funerals, such as Robert Wilson III, who at 22nd and Lehigh faced down 2 armed individuals in a GameStop and lost his life in that process. We all have seen what happened to Walter Wallace in West Philadelphia. But both of those victims' mothers had the same salt content in their tears and truly missed their sons. We have to figure out how we can better provide justice and safety, and have the ability to achieve this within the Police Oversight Commission. This new commission will be bold and will reflect the geographic and population diversity of Philadelphia. We will designate and listen to the cries of so many people that we have heard from. The purpose of this Police Oversight Committee is threefold. It is to create a fair and equitable process for civilian complaints. Number 2, to create a better interaction with police from our department, and to restore the trust of the citizens in that process. This commission will be about 3 basic things. The first is accountability. Doctors are regulated by the State Board of Medicine. Lawyers are regulated by the Disciplinary Board of the Supreme Court. And elected officials, we're regulated by everybody, but in particular, the Ethics Board. And when it comes to the Philadelphia Police Department, remember this: no one should be below the law, and no one can be above the law. The second thing that we have to focus on is proportionality. The punishment for stealing a loaf of bread should not be lifetime imprisonment. And the punishment for driving while black, having Skittles in your hand or a cell phone or expired tags cannot be a death sentence. And the third part of this, the third pillar of this, should be forgiveness and redemption. Individuals that serve their time, pay their debt to society, should be welcomed back to the community with the fullness of that community. Similarly, organizations such as the police department, when they find out they're doing something wrong and take corrective action, should be given and re-given the trust of that community. Members of this body, members of this council, we will never be the captains of the ship we are building today. But we can build it in a way that we equip that ship with the proper necessities to deal with the rough seas it will encounter, the storms that assuredly are ahead. We want to be able to create a commission that can withstand those rough seas, navigate through all of the cases they will see, and be able to get to the shores of justice for the citizens of Philadelphia. Mr. President, members of this body, viewing public, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. We appreciate you and appreciate your hard work over a number of years. Hopefully finally get us to the point where we can put in place what we all have sought for so many years. Mr. Christmas, I'm going to call the name of the first witness to testify on bill number 210074.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Mr. Malcolm Jenkins, please.
Good morning, sir. You connected?
Yes.
Please proceed with your testimony. You state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Malcolm Jenkins. Good morning to all of the members of City Council. Thank you to Councilmember Jones for inviting me to open up today's hearing and for having the courage to put forth one of the most comprehensive and bold police oversight proposals that this nation has ever seen. I'm here to let Philadelphia City Council know that this proposal must pass. Far too long we've watched as police officers who've caused tremendous harm in this city never be held accountable. Union contracts have protected bad actors from accountability, and so has a culture that has let misconduct run rampant. Just last week, an Inquirer article recounted one officer alone has been subject to at least 11 citizen complaints and 5 internal investigations, and was still allowed to keep working cases. He sent multiple innocent people to prison, and people of color in this city knew that police misconduct was rampant, but had no recourse to change it. And so much of it occurs in the dark, hidden from public view. A robust Police Oversight Commission with funding and power can help to change that. It will also lead to a safer city. Police accountability is important unto itself, but it is also directly tied to our physical safety. When people believe in law enforcement, or they believe that law enforcement is above the law, they are unlikely to rely on them for protection or serve as witnesses or even report crime in general. We must change how policing occurs in this city, and it is an important piece. An important piece to that puzzle is strong and effective oversight. We are now seeing the disastrous effects of decades of police abuse in this city. Let's review some of the things that we've seen occur in this city over the past few years without oversight. We've seen racist, misogynistic, xenophobic posts on social media from over 300 officers. We've seen alarming rates of illegal stops and frisks and pretextual car stops on Black and brown citizens. We've seen the use of tear gas on peaceful protesters. We've seen coerced confessions that have sent innocent people to prison. And so it's no surprise then that our citizens do not trust the police. And the effects of this mistrust are serious. Councilmember Jones's proposal for civilian oversight, combined with the City Council's push for violence prevention measures, can go a long way in repairing the trust and ensuring safety in our communities. For the first time, we will see an oversight board with full-time employees with experience in investigating police misconduct. subpoena power, and access to investigative materials and electronic police files and records, all of which are prerequisites for a successful investigation. And we'll see the ability to issue disciplinary recommendations and have the police commissioner respond directly to those decisions. I encourage council members to stand strong in the face of any opposition to this proposal. We have a crisis in the city, and this is the first step to stop it. Failure to pass this proposal, on the other hand, will send a powerful message to the city, especially to the communities of color, that City Council does not care about meaningful solutions to the twin problems of violence and misconduct in Philadelphia. We cannot afford to hear that message. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for your testimony, and thank you for your service, both in and out of the city of Philadelphia. Are there any questions of this witness at this time, or members of the committee? There being none, want to thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Christmas, I forgot to remind members, witnesses, your testimony should be within 3 minutes as we proceed. So you can get to the point with your testimony, and then we'll possibly have follow-up questions. We have a long list of individuals today, so we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to testify. Thank you. Mr. Christmas, could you call the second panel?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Mr. State Representative, Mr. Jordan Harris.
Representative, connected?
I am.
You got that great background, sir. A long time since I've been up there.
Can you hear me, Council President?
We can hear you, sir. Yes, sir. This state your name for the record, Rep, and proceed with your testimony, please.
Sure. Jordan Harris, State Representative for the 186th Legislative District. Good morning, Council President, to Council Member Jones, the author, and to the council members, definitely to the council members that represent my district, Council Members Kenyatta Johnson and Jamie Gaultier, and to all members of council and guests. Thank you for inviting me to speak today on the importance of the proposed Citizens Police Oversight Commission. The events of the last few years have brought back to the forefront the issues of police accountability. From the protests that we saw sparked by the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, to the death of Walter Wallace Jr. right here in Philadelphia, the public has spoken out and demanded more accountability from our law enforcement. Now, we understand that a majority of our law enforcement go to work and do what is necessary and right. But what we also know is that the Citizens Police Oversight Commission is a much needed step for accountability and for transparency. Make no mistake, the public will be served better by increased accountability and transparency. Citizens deserve to know who is policing our streets and complaints or problems that may have been lodged against those officers. For the citizens are the ones who have consented to be governed. We took a big step towards increasing accountability and transparency at the state level recently when we passed legislation creating a statewide database that houses complaints against law enforcement officers. Before hiring a new officer, a department must now check this database for prior complaints. And if they decide to hire the officer, they must acknowledge that they know of this officer's troubled past. That legislation authored by my colleague, Representative Chris Rabb. In addition to that, at the state level, we've created a Deputy Inspector General position within the Inspector General's office. That office holder will be responsible for weeding out waste, fraud, and abuse within the state level policing and all other departments under the jurisdiction of the governor. And that office has also created its own oversight committee for policing at the state level. Yet there is still more work that needs to be done. We must deal with Act 111, which we know has continuously allowed for police officers who have been shown to not deserve to wear the badge. It has shown that they continue to get their jobs back through the arbitration process. My colleague, Representative Donna Bullock, continues to work on that. But there is more that we can do right here in the city of Philadelphia. The current Police Advisory Board, while with great intentions, still has many limitations. The process can take very long with members of the community waiting for a disposition, and in many ways it may lack the authority needed to fulfill a much cumbersome process. But this proposal, the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, will have increased power and authority to gather testimony and documents through the power of subpoena. It will be able to make disciplinary and policy recommendations to police administration. It will receive the investigations that all citizen complaints against the police include when a member of law enforcement lodges a complaint against another officer. Most importantly, the commission will be empowered to investigate all cases of officers discharging of their weapons in incidents where a citizen is killed or seriously injured during a police investigation. And all of this information would be posted online for all of the public to view. Listen, it is simple in my mind. This is a much needed step for police accountability in the Commonwealth and in the city of Philadelphia. I personally would like to see something like this at the state level for all police departments. We cannot expect citizens to pick up the phone and call the police. We cannot expect citizens to go to the police with information if those citizens cannot expect transparency and accountability from those officers. This is not about besmirching the names of officers. No, this is about holding those who have the power to arrest and take your life to a standard that we all agree should be a higher standard. So I thank you to all of my council members for their support of this. Thank you to the author, and thank you to the citizens who have spoken loud and clear that accountability, transparency is oversight that all of us who consent to be governed want to see in our police.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Hold on a second, Rep. I'm not sure. I know there are a couple of members who have asked to ask questions. Councilman Jones or Green, did you have questions for this particular witness?
Yes, Mr. President. I just want to.
Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the whip. From whip to whip, I'm thankful for the partnership we have in City Council with the Philadelphia delegation and the State House. Without those pieces of legislation, it is difficult to create that forum for justice that we seek. So our working with you has been a pleasure and also informative, because a lot of these regulations cannot be monitored unless they are passed by your body. So we appreciate what you're doing. We appreciate and understand that you have to travel up that turnpike and deal with a different mindset, is all I'll say. And we appreciate you putting up the good fight. And we will be supporting and monitoring what you do and encouraging your passage of legislation that is helpful to the people in Philadelphia. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Council President. Echo the comments made by Councilmember Jones, and thank you, Representative Harris, for being here. I'm glad you had a chance to mention in your comments the work of State Representative Donna Johnson Bullock. I've been working with her and her Act 111 legislation through the Pennsylvania Municipal League, who's also been very supportive of her. I actually spoke with her over the weekend I know she's looking for a Republican co-sponsor. Previously, Russ Diamond was a co-sponsor last term, looking for another sponsor. Do you have any sense, and I know the Pennsylvania Municipal League, through our legislative director, Amy Sturgis, has been working with her trying to identify a sponsor. Do you have a sense if that is something that's going to be feasible this year, or is that still a lot of work to be done?
Well, I'm sorry. Am I allowed to answer? My bad, Council President. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Green, for the question. I am optimistic that there is a possibility for us to come to a consensus on how we deal with Act 111. As you said, Representative Bullock, who's the chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, has been leading the charge on this. The crux of a lot of what we're trying to do revolves around the appeals process to the decision of the arbitrator. Currently, the arbitrator's decision is final. What we're asking is that decision be allowed to be appealed to a neutral person, and our suggestion is a member of the Court of Common Pleas. So our thought process is, if you can allow, and here's the thing, we're looking at just the discipline. We're not talking about things that are handled in the collective bargaining agreements around, time and overtime and work conditions. We're talking purely discipline. So I think there is an opportunity to find that, and members here on council who are members of the police reform work group have been, digging into the nuts and bolts to try to get this done, to try to find a Republican counterpart over in the House that we could find some consensus to do it. I do believe there is an opportunity. I don't want to put a timetable on it, but I do believe there's opportunity for us to get this work done.
And thank you, Representative Harris. I will say that when I came in as president for the Pennsylvania Municipal League, I thought this was an issue that would be more a Philadelphia and Pittsburgh issue. But from some of the executive committee members who are mayors of towns like Scranton, Lancaster, Pittston, they all raised the issue of the need for Act 111 reform for the challenges they were dealing with in their jurisdictions. So this is not just a Philadelphia issue, but it's a Commonwealth issue. And from that perspective, we'll continue to work forward with you on this legislation. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. And thank you, Webb. I appreciate you testifying today.
Thank you.
Council President.
I got you, Councilman. Here, recognize Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Councilman Curtis Jones, his hard work regarding this legislation, but also my state representative, minority whip in the state house, Democratic Party, Jordan Harris. I remember after George Floyd death, Jordan got on the phone and called different legislators saying, listen, I don't want to just do a press conference for the sake of doing a press conference. I actually want to do something concrete and substantial, and begin organizing around a police reform group that has resulted in some significant changes, and also collaborating with legislation that we've introduced in City Council. And so just wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge you for your hard work, State Rep, and keep up the good work. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilman. There are no additional questions for this witness. I want to thank you very much and look forward to continuing along the work relationship. Thank you. The next witness is Jonathan Junkett. Mr. Junkett, are you connected?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Just state your name for the record and please proceed with your testimony.
Of course. I'm Jonathan Junkett. I believe I'm presenting along with Stephen Landis, although he may be after me. I, along with Stephen, we're long-term Project Home employees. And specifically, we're here to speak about our frustrations with the current complaint process, the frustrations and kind of the failure of the system overall. Stephen, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
All right, thank you. So for some context, back in July of 2016, police were called out to Project Home St. Columba, where we were both supervisors. They were called out there for a 302 of a homeless gentleman, a veteran, double amputee. He was nonviolent at the time. He had serious mental illness, and essentially, instead of helping this person get crisis intervention, he was then, by PPD officers, he was dumped out of his wheelchair, handcuffed, and brutally assaulted by one of the officers in particular, causing his eye to come out of the socket, causing intense bleeding. Throughout this process, we were seeking help from superior officers. We were calling 911, seeking backup. We were asking and pleading with the partner to intervene. However, instead, police only and superiors only arrived on site once that officer made blatantly false allegations against our client. So from there, he was denied medical care, kept in a van, taken to the wrong location, again, had to be rushed to emergency surgery to save any vision in his eye. We had requested assistance in filing a complaint from the lieutenant who arrived on site, but were told we were not allowed to, that only the participant himself could do so. When we did do the process, internal affairs did respond, but again, the system seemed to be entirely designed to exonerate the officers. From start to finish, there seemed to be no accountability actually built into the complaint process. There was no transparency, nor was there any follow-up or feedback really throughout the process. So this culminated 2018 when there was a hearing for not the officer who perpetrated the violence, but instead the partner. We never actually received official follow-up on the person who perpetrated the violence, what happened in his case. We do know he was later fired, but not for the reason of the violence, for a separate issue. So altogether, like, the people we represent are often very disenfranchised, but also, like, this is a system that affects all Philadelphians, and it really, it sounds like we're some of the few who've really gotten to do the process from start to finish. And I can see why, like internal affairs, like our interactions with them, again, seem to indicate that we are the ones in trouble, that our participant was the one in trouble. It was set up to support the officers and not us. So it just really demonstrates the need for this legislation, the need for increased accountability, and for Philadelphians to be protected in this manner. Stephen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing really to add substantially to that. I do echo everything you said, Jonathan. I do believe that all citizens in Philadelphia should have access to this and full transparency in this accountability process. But I also want to emphasize how important it is for organizations that work in the community and who regularly rely on the police department to respond to things like this, and really in partnership in a lot of ways. I would add that, due to sort of the lack of knowledge of what the follow-up and accountability was in this case, we then took kind of extra precautions in future cases. For example, filming the police as they respond to 302s, and not all officers respond too kindly to being filmed in those instances. So I think that this kind of accountability can really benefit both parties in this case.
Yeah. I would also add, I do not believe that we would even have heard from internal affairs or gotten as far as we did if we were not attached to a large organization known for advocacy. Also, we did have photos of the incident, camera evidence of the incident. So without those other factors, I think this wouldn't have gone anywhere. And as a manager working in homeless systems for the last 10 or more years, I can say I've also seen other complaints filed against PPD officers which were never addressed, or was an internal affairs call that lasted 5 minutes and then fizzled out. So overall, just really want to voice that we've had experience with the current system, and it does not serve its purpose and has really failed Philadelphians. As we've seen it.
Thank you, Mr. Justin, and thank you, Mr. Landis. We appreciate your testimony here today.
Of course. Thank you very much for having us.
Any questions from Members of the committee for these witnesses? They're seeing none. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now move on to panel 3. Vanessa Garrett Harley, the First Deputy Managing Director of the City of Philadelphia. Ms. Harley, are you available? Are you connected?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Vanessa Garrett Harley, First Deputy Managing Director. I am pleased to be here today to testify regarding Bill number 210074 and ultimately establishing the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. The Kinney administration strongly supports the goals of this legislation and the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, particularly how it can play a vital role in promoting transparency and accountability within the Philadelphia Police Department and improving relationships with residents and the community. I also want to thank Councilmember Jones for his leadership on this critical issue and for collaborating with the administration on this legislation. Over the past year, the Police Department, in partnership with the Police Advisory Commission, has been working to introduce new efforts to increase transparency and accountability. These efforts include launching a voluntary mediation process for officers and civilians for low-level complaints, reviewing internal affair processes, making changes to procedure and the organizational structure, updating the Police Department website to show 5 years of completed complaints for public review, and an extensive review of the Police Board of Inquiry, or PBI, disciplinary process from the past 7 years. We anticipate part 1 of these recommendations to improve fairness of the disciplinary process under PBI and to be publicly released within the next 2 weeks. We also want to ensure that the Citizens Police Oversight Commission is resourced to restore public confidence, to review residents' complaints, and to create better police-community interactions. In our proposed FY22 budget, we've allocated $1.9 million and look forward to working with City Council to ensure that the Commission is resourced appropriately and resourced in out years as we stand our work together and we work together to stand this Commission up. While we are very much committed to the goals of the Commission and the legislation, I do want to express our concerns around just a few elements of the bill. It will be critical that the Commission work with the Police Department and the District Attorney's Office to ensure that there are a limited number of concurrent investigations in order to preserve the integrity of the investigations themselves and to maximize the ability of the city to uphold discipline. We are also committed to sharing information through a process that aligns with privacy laws and to the extent allowable through the collective bargaining agreement, which may limit the disclosure of some data as itemized in the bill. Deputy Mayor of Labor, Rich Laser, is here as part of the panel this morning and will address these concerns in more detail. We look forward to a continued partnership, as always, with City Council and community members to ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability in the Police Department, as this is vital. This concludes my testimony, and I'm available to try and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harley. Are there any questions by members of the committee for this witness? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for your work. Oh, sorry, Councilman Jones.
Thank you. There's construction in the background, and I believe it's to construct this new Police Oversight Commission. But let me say this to you. I, too, appreciate the cooperation from you, your staff, the mayor, the police commissioner in going through the analysis of the composition of this commission. One of the things that you mentioned was a dollar amount, which I believe was 1.9. We think we may be close, but not quite there on the number, because we do realize that this has to be phased in. We've learned in budgeting in City Council that if you start something new or create new hires, all of the costs do not come in the first year. So we recognize that. But when we give context to the amount that we're talking about, and someone asked me during this process, well, how much does this commission cost? And then I answered with, how much does not doing this commission cost us all. And so in that respect, how much did we wind up settling last year in lawsuits that complaints resulted in an affirming of the mistreatment of a citizen? Do you know how much that was?
I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers. I'm sure the law department can provide them, but I guarantee you it was more than 1.9 million, if that's the point.
It would have shocked you to know it was 16 million last year?
Would not shock me.
All right, I'm just putting that on the record to say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of settlements. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for coming up with that term. Figure out a way to use it somewhere else. Thank you. Councilman Johnson, you had a question for this witness?
Yeah, I just had a couple. Yeah, I have a question just regarding who's qualified to participate in serving on the commission. I understand that former police officers aren't eligible to participate on the commission. I just wanted to get an idea that what if, like, you have individuals who are former officers who are experts, right, who support reform, would they benefit? Wouldn't the commission benefit by them having the opportunity to participate? And also, I just want to get an idea: does the oversight only monitors the work that officers does while they're on duty, or does it also cover like private, like in their private life in terms of their actions as well when they're off duty?
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Jones.
So to the first issue, that the prohibition of a former FOP member or police officer is something we struggled with. But at the end of the day, what we said was that former police officers could be a part of the staff as a part of their extensive experience. But most people believe that there might be some issue with, and that's why we have hearings, with a former member of the police department. So on the downside of that, people like Sheriff Bilal, people that have served.
Johnson, Kevin Bethel.
Yeah, Kevin Bethel. All of those things we had to struggle with. So it is something that we have struggled with and are trying to vet through this hearing process. Member Johnson.
Okay, and then my last one is in terms of the scope. Will the scope of the investigations on civilian complaints be limited to misconducts committed within the scope of the officer doing their professional duties, or also how they engage in their conduct in their private lives?
In the legislation.
So the intent is to cover both in the line of duty and, for example, domestic issues. If a Philadelphia police officer, for whatever reason, there's a complaint that maybe a spouse was threatened, that could conceivably come up under the commission. There will have to be a lot of give and take between the administration, between the police department, and between the independent commission to decide who should pursue what levels of complaint. And that is something that will have to be worked out, Member Johnson.
All right, and one last part, Chairman Jones. And so now we have the commission that's going to focus on investigations, and then also the administration is going to create a deputy inspector general for police investigations, right? How are they going to overlap? How are they going to intertwine, collaborate, check and balance? I think that strengthens our efforts in doing monitoring around police reform. But how do we make sure that the two are working in sync?
So in every aspect of law enforcement, you have the Philadelphia police, the state police, the feds. You have all of these branches of government and monitoring. and somehow, from time to time, they actually collaborate on things, and sometimes they don't. And I think that might be the nature of this. This is not designed to create another layer of bureaucracy where it is appropriate for all entities to work together or to pass off on investigations that will have to be decided case by case. And there may come a time when there is disagreement, and the internal affairs may say, we don't think this is meritorious of an investigation. And the independent Police Oversight Committee may decide such is not the case. But we have to have that ability to agree or to disagree.
Yeah, Chairman Jones, and I just want to direct a question to Vanessa. Vanessa, can you just clarify for me, because it's separate from internal affairs. Internal affairs is doing with the Philadelphia Police Department, right? And the reason why Councilman Jones is creating this oversight commission is because a lot of times, you know, our approach may be contrary to their approach, right? But the deputy, this position is from the administration, which is Inspector General for Police, Deputy Inspector General for Police Investigations, which is creating a new position to actually do police investigations. So, Vanessa, can you just elaborate on the duties? And obviously, we see what the responsibilities are, but can you clarify them? And also, from your perspective, from the administration perspective, how this new position will gel with the commission that we're creating right now from the council's perspective?
So thank you, Councilman Johnson, for that question. The new position, the Deputy Inspector General for Police and Police Oversight, is exactly what you said. It is a very new position. It has just been hired for. At this point, it is of one person, but we thought it important to bring that position in to work in conjunction in many ways with the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. It certainly will not be working contrary to it. I think that the scope of what they will be covering may be different, but we are very committed to working collaboratively, and the breadth of the work that needed to be done to ensure the level of transparency, fairness, and oversight of the police department, we thought required that additional position. In many jurisdictions, they have what's equivalent to our Citizens Police Oversight Commission, as well as the Inspector General position. Typically, what may be different in scope, if I'm understanding it correctly, the Citizens Police Oversight Commission will have the authority and will be actually conducting individual investigations based on complaints that are received and all of the other things that are in tandem with that law. The ideal of the Inspector General is that they probably will not be doing those individual investigations. They will not be looking into those individual cases and complaints. The Oversight Commission will be doing that. That the Inspector General will probably be dealing at a more global general level, more typically looking at like policies, procedures, more oversight in that way. That's not to say that they can't work, and we hope that they do work in tandem with the Citizens Police Oversight Commission or collaboratively, and much like Councilman Jones was explaining, there are different arms to this, but there are many jurisdictions that have this and they work very well together. It provides another layer, so to speak, of the oversight process.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm with the more the merrier. I just wanted to make sure, just looking at the syncing of the two, and making sure that there's a collaborative approach, and obviously, the more oversight, the better. So thank you very much. And again, thank you, Councilman Jones, Mr. Chairman, for your hard work on this legislation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Council President. First, I wanted to congratulate Councilmember Jones on his hard work. I think this is going to be really monumental for the city, so kudos to you. Vanessa, in your testimony, you mentioned needing to limit concurrent investigations between the commission and the DA and PPD. Can you expound more on why concurrent investigations are or would be problematic?
And so they may not all be problematic, which is why I use the word limit and not just eliminate or that they should not be done. However, we always try and give deference to if there is a criminal investigation that is taking place For example, if the DAs are investigating something that involves a police officer because they're trying to determine whether or not they are going to bring criminal charges, typically, for example, the Police Advisory Commission right now or other offices, they kind of they cede the authority to them, and so to speak, because what we don't want to do is in any way taint or prohibit something that may go forth in that fashion. And so that's why I use the word limit, so that they kind of aren't necessarily tripping over each other sometimes, and or won't. I don't want to use the word interfere because it wouldn't be intentional interference, but just want to be able to make sure that you preserve that highest level of culpability if in fact that's what's going on. And so that's what I meant by the word limit. I do believe that the Oversight Commission, the DA's office, and the internal affairs or whatever other offices inside of the police department will be able to work very collaboratively together. But in particular, I was more focused on the district attorney's office and the criminal investigations and the decisions that they have to make as to whether or not they pursue criminal charges.
Okay, but we will not in any way try to restrict concurrent investigations in a way that limits the commission's ability to ensure transparency and accountability. Like that's like a key piece of why we're establishing this body. So it just it made me a little bit nervous to see.
No, the commission will always have, the way this is currently written, the ability to conduct investigation and other things as they see. I'm sure the commission will meet and make their determination as to how they proceed forward on some things, but they will always have ultimately the same ability to be able to report out and to ensure that the transparency is there and that in accordance with their rules that they think things are being done fairly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions from members of the committee for this witness? Don't see any. Ms. Harley, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for Saturday.
Oh, no problem.
Good assistance on Saturday. All right, thank you very much. Our next witness would be Anthony Arras. Hope I didn't butcher your last name, sir.
It's okay. It's Arachi.
Arachi, I'm sorry.
Close enough. All right, good morning.
Yeah, go ahead. Please proceed.
Ready to go? Okay. Good morning, council members, members of the administration, and residents of Philadelphia. I'm, of course, before you all today to voice enthusiastic support for the bill creating the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. This bill marks a watershed moment in policing, not just for Philadelphia, but for the nation. This bill, if passed, will start our city on a path to become the national model of police oversight and transparency and accountability in government. This bill and the professional and disciplined execution of its mandate will show the world that there is no trade-off between living our values and protecting the public. We all know what's in it at this point, so I would like to take my brief time to speak to all those who think the bill doesn't go far enough, goes too far, or otherwise just feel nervous about how all of this is going to turn out. First, everyone take a breath. A lot of people from a lot of different perspectives all came together to tackle this issue. And while no bill is going to satisfy everyone, this bill and the professional and disciplined execution of its mandate has the potential to be transformative. Policing has a tough history in Philadelphia, and the goal of oversight is not only to recognize that history, but to drive positive change for the future. And this bill not only makes that change possible, but required by law. A commission that represents the heart and soul of Philadelphia and a disciplined professional staff that seeks to find fact, hold the department accountable, improve policy and practice, help resolve community issues, and mediate disputes can and will foster excellence in policing and inspire confidence in the community that their voices are heard. Raising the standards of accountability, transparency, and professionalism in the Philadelphia Police Department will make the department better, and more importantly, it will foster legitimacy, which is something that no police department can function without. Legitimacy is achieved by example. It is nurtured by humility, and it is propagated by the reality that the rules really and demonstrably apply to everyone. Legitimacy is achieved by pursuing excellence and speaking the truth, not only when it's convenient, but when it is unpopular. For the residents of Philadelphia to view the police department as legitimate, the department must be accountable to the public. They now will be. The emblem of the Philadelphia Police Department has 3 words on it: honor, integrity, and service. Those words mean something, and they are not aspirational. They are a requirement. And oversight is the enforcement mechanism of those requirements. Professional and disciplined oversight forces an organization to live the values it claims to possess and enforces the expectations of those who are served by it. Oversight is good. Oversight is right. And oversight is here. No one needs to be nervous. It's going to be great, and it's going to make the city better and safer. You'll see. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arachi. Any questions of this witness by members of the committee? Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Mr. Arachi, I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to thank you personally, but I'll take this opportunity to do so publicly. Your insights to what we could be have been helpful in the passing of the original charter referendum, and now as a part of the construction of the ordinance. I thank you for your service, and I want you, I'm going to beg you, beseech you, whatever the appropriate adjective is, to remain a part of the ongoing success that we may have as a commission. But I don't recall ever telling you how grateful we are for your service. And I wanted to take that opportunity.
I appreciate that, Council Member. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions by members of the committee for this witness? There being none, Mr. Rossi, thank you very much, and thank you for your service.
Thank you all.
The next witness is Rich Laser. Mr. Laser, are you connected?
Yes, Council President.
All right, thank you. This states your name for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I am Rich Laser, Deputy Mayor of the Department of Labor. I'm pleased to be here today to testify regarding Bill number 210074, establishing the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. I'd like to thank Councilman Jones for all the leadership and work on this bill. And I'd also like to thank Samantha Williams from his staff, because she worked very well with us, really trying to make sure all this comes together and works well. So I want to thank her. As first Deputy Managing Director shared, the administration and Department of Labor are committed to the goals of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. Many of the activities contemplated in the bill raise operational challenges that we want to acknowledge. These include the process for investigation and the expectations around disclosure of information by city agencies. Changes to how the police department investigates, including co-investigations with the commission or deferring investigations to the commission, will likely need to be addressed through the bargaining process. In addition to federal privacy laws that will need to be considered, the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board has said that the release of information protected by confidentiality rules can constitute a term and condition of employment, and thus is a mandatory subject of bargaining. The city may therefore have to bargain certain aspects of the extensive information sharing requirements of the bill, depending on how the commission implements them. This legislation lays out a strong vision for the future of the commission, and we are committed to engaging to ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability in the police department. We also want to acknowledge that this may take some time to effectively implement. This concludes my testimony, and I'm available for any questions at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Laser. Are any questions from members of the committee for this witness? Seeing any, Mr. Laser.
Council President,
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gautier.
thank you. Good morning, Rich. In your testimony, you mentioned how co-investigating with the commission or deferring investigations to the commission would likely need to be addressed through the bargaining process. Can you expound on what that means for the viewing public? And can you also talk about, what it means if the union does not agree?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. That's a great question. Thank you, council member. So just to expand on that. So right now, investigations for police are done by bargaining unit members of the FOP. So that is a job that they currently do. So in our proposals, and I know through council member Gilmore Richardson's legislation when we did our hearing back in the fall, we talked about civilianization. So in our proposals, there's a civilianization piece that will allow for us to try to see if we can have other folks other than folks in the bargaining unit do investigations. So that, because that work has been done by bargaining unit members, that's something that we may have to go through the process to have other folks do that investigation, because it's work that they previously have done and are currently doing. So we'll do that through our process. And as you know, we are in the Act 111 process now. We're getting ready to schedule hearings. And that's something that we will put, because we could not agree to negotiate that, that will go to Act 111 through the hearing process with the arbitration panel. And then the panel will the city will put its case on why we think it's important that civilianization happens. And then, the panel will make a decision in the arbitration report.
But this is something that the administration is actively pushing on in the negotiation?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gimm.
Thank you very much, Council President. I had a very similar question, because the issue of the civilianization is very important. And so, has the administration, in what ways has the administration made clear that this will be a major aspect of the bargaining process, that this will be a top priority?
Yeah, so it's in our process, it's in our asks now. It's in what we have submitted to the arbitration panel, and we made it clear to the FOP that civilianization was a top priority for the administration.
And would you expect that the mayor might make, should the Citizens Police Oversight Commission be passed, would the mayor be open to making remarks just asserting that this is a core part of the Oversight Commission as well?
Yes, I'm sure. And in our Act 111 process, the mayor usually opens up the process on the city side, like we do for all Act 111s, and he will go through the top priorities to the arbitration panel on what the city is asking for.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. There are no additional questions. This witness by members of the committee. Ms. Laser, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate your service. Our next panel, our first witness is Bilal Qayyum. He's a current member of the Police Advisory Commission, and also a person that we've known for a long, long time, wearing many hats. Mr. Qayyum, are you connected?
Good morning. Thank you very much, President Clark, and also members of City Council. Let me give a big shout out to my good friend Curtis Jones, Councilman Jones, for the tremendous work he has done to bring us to this point today. I am testifying in favor of Bill 210074 for the Citizens Police Oversight. My comments are going to be more as you mentioned earlier, Councilman Clark, I do serve on Police Advisory Commission now, and I just want to make some points that I have have witnessed and experienced in my position. And the first one was having the power, and it's written in the President bill, and we have it already. A lot of folks don't know it, but having the power of having to subpoena power. So when we don't get the cooperation from the police, and I would use a perfect example is the Facebook controversy under, you probably remember the Plainview. It took us almost 4 to 5 months to get information that we requested from the police department regarding questions we had about the investigation of the Facebook incidents. There was debate among the members of the PAC about should we move to the point of saying to the police if they don't give us this information, that we would exercise our ability to have the subpoena power. I found out when I became a member of the commission that we did have a subpoena power, but it was never used. And I think that that's going to be a key part as moving forward with the new commission of really having that power and letting the police know that if they don't respond within appropriate time, that they will be taking some really direct action to get the information that we really need for investigation purposes. The second part I want to bring up as it needs to be considered is that there is, and I'm not sure all the details on this, but with relating to a police shooting, if a person is shot by the police, of course it's public, a lot of investigation, but there are shootings with police of individuals where the individual is not shot. So we need to look at that part of that process and the new oversight committee. How do we deal with a police shooting where an individual wasn't shot, but a police officer disarmed his weapon? The third issue I want to raise is, and was talked a little bit about it, and even with Laser from the mayor's office about the police contract. Timing of negotiating that contract with the city and FOP, and timing of the passing of this legislation might be crucial about, and I know that some folks believe that the FOP might sue because of this legislation. So there's a timing issue I think that this city council has to consider and discussion with the mayor about when this commission would be approved by city council and put in place in the process, and also when the city is negotiating or has negotiated the terms of the contract with the FOP. I think that's something that city council has to take immediately as part of your agenda. The fourth point I want to raise is this issue of budgets. If you look at other cities, the good part about Philadelphia now in this bill is that we can look at other cities and their success of establishing oversight commissions. Other cities are using a formula almost like 1.5% of their city's police budget. If we did that for Philadelphia, really the budget needs to be around $10 million. Now, I understand that, we got to phase this in, Councilman Jones, like you talked about, but 1.9 million, I think we got to really up that ante, that with the city at least to 5 million, then maybe phase it out to 10 million as we move forward. If we really are serious about hiring the proper staff, investigating, and do all the stuff that we have to do under this new commission. And I just wanted to mention, too, that in conversation that Councilman Johnson raised about police officers, former police officers, under the President PAC, we had a former police officer on the PAC. So that did happen. It was a young lady, I forget her name, she was on it, but she stepped down. So I would recommend that the committee should consider that we don't, I understand what the point you're raising, Councilman Jones, but I think that if you have a former police officer on the new commission, it could really help if it's the right person, as always. And there was some names thrown out, former police commissioner Johnson, Bethel, who's now with the school district. There's some great individuals that were former police officers that I think could add a really good point to be a part of the commission. So I want to throw that out and put that for consideration. With that, I look forward to the great work the council is doing, and I'm excited, as you all know, about giving this commission now really more teeth and more power to really operate. We have a history in this city of institutional racism, particularly in the police department, and this can help break those barriers. I know we're moving forward now with the new police commissioner. Attitudes are beginning to change internally. I'm aware of that. But we must have a strong oversight commission. Every city that have, and we're not even talking about this, I haven't heard this mentioned so far, but having a strong oversight commission will also help with the violence problem. Every city where there's violence that has dropped is because of the relationship between the police department on the positive side and the community. Every city, if you look at the statistics, because people will then talk to police and give the police information. Little Johnny down the street is the one that did the shooting. They give that information. So when you look at dropping of homicides in cities, it's a direct result. Part of it is a major direct result of the police having positive relationships with the community, where the community felt confident they could give information to the police that could lead to reduction in violence of that city. So it's two parts, not only us overseeing and making sure that we're holding the police accountable for their action, but also building a stronger base with the community and the police that we can help resolve shootings in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you very much for the opportunity for me to give my remarks this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Qayyum. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank you, Bilal, for your duality. And what do I mean by that? You fight for the corrections on police behavior as hard as you fight for ending gun violence in the city of Philadelphia. And that duality is the spirit in which we're entering this legislation from the public safety aspect. And I really do appreciate all of your sacrifice over the decades to those causes, and just want to put that on the record. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Mr. Qayyum. Thank you so much for your continued support, both during government and post-government. Some people say you did more after you left than you did while you were here. but thank you so much. Look forward to continuing to work with you on these very, very critical issues in the city of Philadelphia. You're doing an awesome job. Thank you. Next up on this panel, we have Suzanne Hudson, I believe. It's Suzanne Hudson, H-U-T. Ms. Hudson from the National. Suzanne Hudson?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Susan Hudson, the president of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. Sorry, I was trying to find the video and
no problem. Just proceed. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, please.
Yeah, good morning again. My name is Susan Hudson, H-U-T as in Tom, S-O-N. I am the president of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, which is a membership organization that supports oversight all over the country. And I thank you for allowing me to be here today. First of all, thank you for taking up this important issue. One of the most important, as we see over the last year and coming up on the anniversary next week of the death of George Floyd, our country is in change for the better, change to make things better, And I just want to salute Philadelphia, which, by the way, is my birthplace, for taking up this important measure. One of the most important, what we found out about oversight over the last, NACL's been around for 26 years now. What we found out over these last 26 years is that we know oversight works. The Task Force on 21st Century Policing under President Barack Obama said that. They said we need some empirical evidence to show that as well. And that oversight needs the strength and resources and independence that it needs to be truly effective. So one thing I know from dealing with our members all over the country is that even with one hand tied behind their back, without proper resources, without proper independence, without proper funding and staff and access to information, our members are still making a difference wherever they are located and whatever power they have. But it is crucially important to provide strength for these agencies to make sure that they can do all those things that they need to do. And so I salute you in working towards that. I think it's super important to, in talking about what strong and effective and important oversight looks like, to look at the structures, making sure that there's some independence there. I know it will be physically outside the police department, but you also want to make sure that there's not an influence from the police department. And you want as much independence as possible for those oversight members to make sure that they are able to have independence of voice. Oversight is not supposed to be opaque. It's supposed to be very transparent. Those are one of our core tenets of oversight. So having the ability to be able to speak about just about everything, to publish information about just about everything. Now, there are obviously some reasons you would not publish some things for safety reasons or others that are, confidentiality or some other reasons, but as being as transparent and as visible as possible. So not hiding things, and being upfront about what the work of the oversight agency. Making sure they have access to all the information that they need to do their jobs. One of the things we see all over the country is that our members are tasked with doing great jobs, but then are delayed or obstructed from getting access to the information that they need. So making sure that that is a part of what you do is critically important. Community involvement and grassroots community involvement is also super important. What we know more and more is that those who are affected by police misconduct or by our criminal justice system as a whole have to be a part of those solutions. So that is critical that is a critical part of oversight as well. Making sure that you bring people to the table, the community to the table, and that you they're able to be a part of those solutions. Funding and structure are super important. Most of us struggle with funding around the country, and we're seeing that being strengthened everywhere. And so we see that you'll be strengthening that here, and there'll be some compensation. That's, I think, important, so that not just people who are wealthy can be a part of the process, but others can as well. Making sure that you have that you've put in information about having critical staffing. One of the things that happened when I was the police monitor for the city of New Orleans, and one of the first things that I noted when I got there was there were only 3 positions available to look at what were over 1,600 police at that time. So being realistic about staffing and resources. I see you got an executive director being planned, council, you're really looking at that. And then also allowing them to be able to hire people as needed. You need experts depending on the types of cases, and allowing them to be able to have their own counsel to defend themselves, and then also consultants to do important work is super important. So I just want to also highlight that. Giving broad powers. Investigations are important. You do have to make sure that because investigations are so labor intensive that you do give enough power, enough resources, and making sure you have enough staffing for all of that. And I see that there are very weighty issues that this commission will be able to investigate. So again, just making sure that you have the resources to be able to conduct real investigations into important matters like that. And so that's very important. And investigations are very sexy when people look at changing oversight, but you also have put in some good things in there that are important, such as being able to look into the histories, being able to look at data, being able to audit policies, practices, and being able to weigh in on those. That is critical to making changes. That's where the rubber meets the road. Police department policies and police departments actually doing some remedial measures or issuing discipline or training to fix aberrant behavior. So that's super important. So I can just go on, but just very important that you put some information in here that gives strength to them. And I would also not, as I've talked about obstruction before and lack of access, making sure that there are penalties and or some real consequence for people in the police department or elsewhere who do not cooperate with the commission and allow them to do their work. That is super important. It happens all over the country, and next to nobody. And almost all of our ordinances talk about everybody having to cooperate, but nobody's held accountable for not doing so. So it just makes sure that that's on your radar as well. But overall, just incredibly important legislation, incredibly important and detailed as to audits and policies and practices and what this commission can touch. And just kudos to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for your work, and thank you for your advice. Appreciate it. We want to get perspectives from all over the country on how this has worked, and we want to make sure that when we implement our program here, it will be the one that everybody looks to try to emulate. Thank you. Question for Ms. Hudson. I think Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas. Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. I'm sorry, I had a little issue. I had a couple questions, but a lot of them were answered already. I think the testimony has been great. I did want to just want to offer thank you and support to Councilmember Jones for the legislation. I know that he's been fighting this fight for a good amount of time. I did hear other folks who've been fighting this fight for a long time. I know, Council President, you're on that list. And I did hear Mr. Quayoun talk about a budget of about $5 million and start and scaling up even higher than that. So I just want to at least go on the record and say that I do support this legislation. I think, again, this is something that's significantly important. Councilmember Jones earlier talked about us paying for it now instead of having to pay later. And earlier in the council hearing, I talked about some of the things that we have as far as the dollars that this is costing the city. So I do think it's important. I think we need to invest money into it. And the only thing I would want the panelists to talk about is just a little bit more of the importance of investing dollars into this initiative, similar to what Councilmember Jones talked about earlier, so we can make sure that the advocacy is there so that this thing can have the teeth that it needs to be extremely effective. So thank you, Councilmember Jones. Thank you, Council President. I appreciate it. And thank you to the panel of witnesses thus far. This is extremely important.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for taking the time with your vast wealth of experience on this matter. My question would be, if you right now, other than what we are proposing, were to say, here's the blue panel best practice in the country, what city and what commission would that be?
That's a tough one. I think right now it would be a toss-up between Oakland, the power that Oakland has, and what they're doing in Madison, which really hasn't, which in its structure looks really good right now and strong. They haven't really gotten off the ground, and they're still getting an executive director in place, but I'm going to be watching that very closely to see where they go. Those two have an enormous amount of power and ability even to hire and fire chiefs. So just very, very strong structures. Now, I will say this: I like the access that I had at LAPD. The Office of Inspector General there had vast access to information. We could look at even the super secret squads that were doing surveillance on officers. We could look into that. We could look into confidential informants. You name it. So I like different parts of different ones. But if I had to pick, as you put me on the spot to do, I would go with those two, Madison and Oakland. And I would just say, if I could, what the previous member, Mr. Thomas, mentioned, when you're looking at funding, they're doing some big things in Oregon right now. The legislature looked at 5% of the police budget for the funding their oversight agency. We see 1 or less than 1% of police budgets right now around the country, not close to enough. I have about 1% in New Orleans, not enough to do all the work. If you look at the breadth of what police touch, it's huge. And you can an oversight agency can find a different topic every day of the year. So the more the better. $5 million is a very good start, though. But I would also just add that anywhere from 2 to 5%, you really be doing something good for your agency.
Give me an example of where oversight committees and actual police departments cooperate, investigate together.
Investigate together. You know, I'm not sure where any agencies have those actual authority to do that. Most do something like what our office does, which is look over the investigations, but not the actual investigators. So I'm not. I have to get back to you on one where they actually do it together. I'm not aware of any that do that.
And then finally, give me one example, and you don't even have to name the city, just the state, where please at all costs avoid doing it this way.
Man. I might say Florida. That's there's a number of agencies there, and they've not had strength. There's been fights to remove them, and at one point dissolved one in Miami-Dade. So there's I would avoid Florida.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. And Ms. Hudson, thank you again for being here today to testify. We appreciate you.
Thank y'all. If there's anything Nicole can do, please do reach out to us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Malika Rahman.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. Just state your name for the record and please proceed with the testimony.
Yes, sir. My name is Malika Rahman. I am a criminal justice professor as well as a member of the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement Executives. And I would like to say thank you to Councilman Clark, as well as Councilman Jones for the invitation, as well as the other council persons who are here today. The reason why I am here is to testify on behalf of this bill as it relates to the Police Oversight, the Citizens Oversight Committee. And when we talk, I've heard some of the testimony today, and I do agree as well that having the committee and implementing a committee that is geared to ensure that there is trust and transparency between law enforcement and the community is essential. But I also would like to add that there are some things that must be done, some considerations that need to be taken as this bill is written right now. Some of those things specifically are the fact that independence is not indicative of isolation. So I've heard a lot of usage of the word independence, it must be independent. And that is 1000% understandable when you look at accountability. I believe Ms. Susan spoke about some of the reasons why the committee needs to be independent, but we also don't want to create a space of isolation. Right? We cannot talk language of repairing and creating a culture of trust and then say we want this to be isolated. Because now you're saying we're isolating ourselves from police, but then we want police to partner with us and give us the information that we're requesting. Secondly, I do not think that this committee should be set in place and be utilized as a means to weaponize itself against law enforcement. we are in a state right now where our city has been stricken with ill repute, ill feelings between the community and law enforcement. And it is up to us as stakeholders, as committee people, as council persons to be able to say, we are going to build that bridge build the bridge to create that gap, right? To fill the gap. And what that means is we have to be able to create options. So this bill says that we want it, but we want it our way. And I've heard a lot of language about power, right? We want power, we want power. But we have to be clear that that power does not put us in a position where we further the gap. We can't utilize that power and say, well, we just want to be able to investigate officers, and then we put people in position where the power is misused. And I think that all of us could agree that that has been done over the years. So when we look at how do we improve these things, one of the things that I would suggest is that the persons who you consider for these positions to sit on this committee, some of them need to have a set of knowledge, expertise, and training in the very thing that you are asking them to have oversight of. You cannot have oversight without insight and intend to be effective. So if we're going to have insight, I am not saying that they need to be from the Philadelphia Police Department, but they do need to have a knowledge base of law enforcement in the city of Philadelphia. They need to have a level of expertise that they can add to the situation and then be able to use that expertise in ways that betters the situation, that improves that relationship, that says, you know, when we review these cases and if we're going to make recommendations, that our recommendations are practical and in line with change. The two have to be synonymous in the room. We can't just say we want to make change and the change not be practical as it relates to law enforcement policies and practices. Lastly, I would like to add that when we talk about solution-driven options, when we say, yes, let's push this committee forward, and we give these persons this power to sit on the committee, when we employ these people who do have the knowledge, expertise, and training in the room and begin these investigations, let's ensure that the people we are equipping have the right tools, that they have the trainings from the Philadelphia Police Academy, where they can understand and be able to assimilate some of the instances that law enforcement officers are going to explain. Because one thing I know as an experienced law enforcement officer, as well as one who educates those now in law enforcement, you cannot, by reading a book, by reading a written document or complaint, ascertain what was going through a person's head or mind in the moment. You don't know what the training has taught them, and you can't try to understand it just from a basis of your own level of knowledge or personal experience. We have to be in a space where we take these things into consideration when we're sitting in rooms where we can make decisions, and we want the power, as it was stated, right, to be able to hand down recommendations and be able to investigate these things. We need to have people in the room who can say, this matter needs to be handled this way. Perhaps we can make a suggestion here, and not just operate from a place of we want the power because we think that we can control law enforcement. I think there has been a culture of control that has been talked about for years, and it is time to change it. If transparency and trust is what we want, then we have to better the relationship and create diversity and inclusion in the room and not outside of the room. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Any questions of this witness by members of the committee? Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Yes. First of all, thank you so very much for agreeing to testify. I make no secret, full disclosure, I think the world of you. And you and Noble and what you've been able to do with law enforcement and organizations of color. Between us, President, she says, listen, you don't want me to testify because I'm going to tell it and I'm going to tell the truth. And I said, I absolutely want you to testify and say what is in your heart because we will all benefit from it. One of the things, to your point, we were walking with a group of brothers, and it was, what was it called? Walking with the Brothers or some Stroll, Brother Stroll, that's what it was. And two of the people that were walking with us, President, were police officers. And as we began to walk, they said, you know, that they had put in their papers to get into drop. And it saddened me. And I said, well, why? And they said, because they were between a rock and a hard place. A rock between traditional folk, the wall of blue and that kind of thing, and then the general sentiments of the community that they are sworn to serve and the mistrust that comes with it. They went on to say that he had been an officer for 12 years and only pulled his gun once. Only used his taser once. And he said, quite frankly, Ms. Rahman, that he was getting beat up, and he had no other choice. But he said he disarmed people mostly by conversation that was from the heart, domestic disputes that he walked up on and said, you know, I know how you feel, but how you going to spend your evening if you do that? And I appreciated the guardian that he was, not a occupying force. So I get what you are saying to us, and I appreciate that being on the record. I want you to know that. All right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair,
Mr. President, I'm sorry, Mr. President, could I just say something to
Sure.
Councilman Jones, if that's okay?
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say thank you for acknowledging that. And to the point that you made about this officer, I just want the people who are listening to this hearing and who are present here today to understand that these officers, myself included, having been one, when you are in these positions, de-escalation and disarming are a skill. It is about the person. And when you see people as human beings, then we are able to deal with them as such. So even as you all prepare to put this committee together, I ask that as you evaluate people's qualifications, as you evaluate what they bring to the table, I ask that you also evaluate their ability to see people as human beings and their ability to discern what is wrong and what is right, not based on personal opinion or personal bias, but based on fact of the matter and based on what the situation calls for at the time. I really do truly thank each of you for allowing me this opportunity. Thank you, Councilman Jones and President Clark, other council person here today. You all have a wonderful day.
Oh, hold on. I think we have another question.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, don't go anywhere yet. But
okay.
I think this conversation is extremely important. The oversight is obviously something that we want to do, but we need to know, like you talk about the front side as it relates to reducing the costs of the indemnities fund, lawsuits and things of that nature, adequately funding this. We need to also give real thought in terms of not only who should be on the commission, but who should be in the police department. And that's a lot of work around that. You know, I got my own little issue with this residency thing. You know, I think that, having the appropriate people on that department probably minimize the need for a significant level of involvement by the police oversight, because people will know they're supposed to do the right thing. But thank you for your perspective. Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, Chair wants to recognize, I think I had some questions for you. Councilwoman?
Thank you so much, Council President. And first, I have to thank my colleague and my district council member, Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr., for this important legislation that will really change how we look at and have police oversight here in the city of Philadelphia and bring more transparency and accountability into a process that is completely needed and necessary. But I wanted to thank Malika Rahman for her testimony, for her candor, and for her suggestion that, we look for individuals who look at the humanity in others. So I just wanted to thank you very much for your testimony and give kudos and congratulations to you on the work that you do as well. So thank you, Council President. Thank you, Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Ms. Maracan, thank you a lot. Appreciate it.
You have a wonderful day.
Appreciate you. Thank
Council
you.
President, I have a question.
I'm sorry. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Fiona Sanchez.
Thank you. And I also want to take a moment and thank Councilman Jones. I think this is our third time trying to get this legislation passed over the last 13 years that he and I think he's my senior colleague by like 2 minutes in the swearing-in ceremony by last name. But I wanted to take this opportunity to ask Malika, particularly as we look, to her point around how do you identify the right folks who can do this job. And I know residency is one of the issues. If you had to choose of the 2 or 3 critical components of our screening of police officers, which one do you think is more discriminatory that should be eliminated or reformed? Is it background? Is it physical? Is it the test? And, is there anything in the new national testing standards that we should be looking at? We know tests are discriminatory by nature, particularly for people of color. Like, if we had to tackle one of those items, which one do you think is the most egregious in terms of eliminating qualified individuals, particularly people of color, in this process?
Yes, ma'am, Councilman Sanchez, that is that is the best question that I think you could have asked, and I'm really glad that you asked it. So I think that the answer to that is background by all means. It is background. It is the most prejudicial of the processes in entering the police department. There are investigators who implement their own implicit and explicit bias during this process, and that has been a major issue with qualifying people and persons to be able to move forward in that process to get that job. Testing is another issue. I would say that would probably fall second, just based on the way that the testing is structured. The written test, by all means, that Nelson-Denny test is not adequate. And we understand that for so many reasons, and we could probably have a whole nother hearing session on that alone. But to answer your question, Councilwoman Sanchez, the background and investigation process is by far the most prejudicial and needs the most reform right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I don't think we have any additional questions of this witness. Thank you very much again for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Next up, we have Reggie Schufert, the Executive Director of the ACLU.
All right. Good afternoon, President Clark and members of council, and members of the administration and public. It's my honor to appear before you today. As President Clark said, I am Reggie Schufert. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Pennsylvania. The downside, I think, to testifying a bit later is that most of the great stuff has already been said. I will reiterate some of those points. I think there's power in repetition. I think important themes and priorities arise when some of those things are repeated. On November 3rd, 2020, over 500,000 Philadelphians voted to support an independent civilian police oversight agency, one that brings about needed transformative change. The ACLU of Pennsylvania urges members of City Council and Mayor Jim Kenney to support the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, CPOC, which is easier to say, as proposed in Bill 210074, and to properly fund what Philadelphia voters have tasked CPOC to achieve. After the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Walter Wallace Jr., Dante Wright, and Adam Toledo, among others, cities around the country have seriously examined the nature of policing. It's a moment of reckoning, if you will. Philadelphians joined this national movement, unsurprisingly, and voted for stronger oversight and public accountability. Bill 210074 answers voters' demand and meets the moral call of this historic moment. For decades, Philadelphians have experienced and witnessed many instances of police misconduct. That is not a surprise to those of us on this call today, including departures from departmental training, violations of department policies, blatant abuses of authority, and excessive use of force. Generally speaking, the Philadelphia Police Department's internal affairs process has failed to yield results that provide much needed justice. A recent report found that the police-led investigatory process has rejected 85% of civilian complaints. Another study revealed that of those who are terminated for misconduct, a total of 71 officers from 2006 to 2017, a massive 62% were rehired. Clearly, Philadelphians need an independent civilian agency, an agency that answers to the public alone, unencumbered by the administration, and without fear that they will be persecuted if they succeed in identifying and exposing police harms. As proposed, CPOC would provide residents with a robust and transparent forum that has the power to carry out the will of the voters and, in so doing, strengthen and modernize police-community relations. As you know, the highlights of the legislation include CPOC having investigatory powers. It grants CPOC the authority to participate in making appropriate charging decisions. It gives CPOC the authority to function as an administrative prosecutor doing disciplinary hearings. And it also would give COP the ability to recommend to the police commissioner what form of discipline should be imposed on an officer who commits a violation. The ACLU of Pennsylvania believes the proposed CPOC offers a greater degree of police accountability if, and only if, as has been testified earlier, it is adequately funded. However, the funding proposed by Mayor Kinney falls woefully short. Philadelphia has the fourth largest police department in the nation. Its oversight agency must be proportionally funded. Contrary to the mayor's proposal, other cities have earmarked an oversight budget that directly relates to the budget of their police department. Chicago's oversight agency budget appropriation can be no less than 1% of the Chicago Police Department's budget, totaling an annual budget of over $13 million. New York City's
and are not held accountable, trust is broken, and the community no longer feels safe. A culture that tolerates and rewards police misconduct erodes public trust. For evidence, we need to look no further than the Plainview Project of June 2019, in which the social media postings of hundreds of Philadelphia police officers, both active and retired, revealed widespread racism, misogyny, homophobia, and xenophobia. How can we expect Philadelphians to trust and cooperate with police when there are those in the department who hate and discount citizens even before interacting with them? How can we expect Philadelphians to trust and cooperate with police when their complaints do not get heard and resolved? Of over 10,000 civilian complaints filed with Internal Affairs between 2015 and 2020, only 75% were investigated, only 20% were sustained, and fewer of those sustained resulted in discipline. It is the will of the people that the CPOC receive and evaluate all citizen complaints and investigate any complaints it determines to be in its discretion, that it co-prosecute cases at the Police Board of Inquiry and recommend discipline for officers found guilty of misconduct. It is the will of the people that the CPOC investigate, even without a citizen complaint, all actions that result in harm to citizens, such as improper search and seizure, police use of force, discharge of a police firearm, and incidents where a police officer is involved in the death of another person. It is the will of the people that the CPOC review and recommend all policies and practices of the police department related to just and fair treatment of all citizens. The authority to review and recommend policy must be proactive, not just reactive. Research from Indiana University from August 2020 by Usman Ali and Sean Nicholson Crody has shown that when there is a strong civilian oversight agency with a broad scope of authority, violent crime rates decrease, acts of racial profiling decrease, citizens killed by police as well as officers killed in the line of duty decrease. We are testifying today in the Committee of the Whole for the creation of a strong civilian oversight agency with a broad scope of authority. For the sake of the whole community, and for there to be a community that is whole, it is the will of the people that a strong Citizens Police Oversight Commission hold police to the highest standards of accountability. Thank you.
Ms. Lax, would you stick around? We're going to let the next couple of panelists testify, and then we'll open up for questions. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
And thank you for all the work, advocacy you guys have done, hearings, working with us. It is truly appreciated.
Thank you.
So the next witness, state your name for the record. Please begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. I'm Amy Mann, representing the Philadelphia multi-faith group, Power Live Free. I was born here, left after college, never dreaming I'd return. Then I had grandchildren born here. They are fifth-generation Philadelphians. I ask you, what do we want for all our children and all our grandchildren? I note that in the chapter of the legislation concerning the composition and powers of CPOC, it states the Commission is an oversight agency designed to ensure the just, transparent, and efficient administration of criminal justice in Philadelphia. Transparent is a good word. All the cities we've researched as background for this legislation list it as a requirement. We've just heard Susan Hudson say the same word. Transparent originally meant the light shines through, and light stimulates vision. So what is it we see? A knee on George Floyd's neck. Here in Philly, we see Walter Wallace's mother looking into the camera, describing the most horrific scene imaginable. I cannot even say it. There is so much pain and suffering. Our community is speaking out. We are demanding a more expansive vision. This is where the word just comes in. We need the light of justice. The Torah says, tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice you shall seek. For you, for me, the same justice. Is this too great a stretch? Can we wrap our heads and our hearts around this? Here are some of the stepping stones to reach the same justice for all. Our community requires a commission that includes direct login access to a database that is accessible, responsible, and usable, that includes videos, body camera information, as well as other information regarding cases being investigated. That enables citizens to actually, who are lodging complaints, to actually track the project of their cases. We do it for packages online. This should also include a listing of all officers' names filing cases against them. We request an audit be made available that includes an annual review of the mayor's budget for the police department. We want subpoena power. If the CPOC recommends a policy change or any amendment to this legislation is removed because of legal challenge or fear of legal challenge, the city needs the city needs to seek independent legal counsel. These are the steps that expand our vision. It is justice that we seek. Thank you for your attention.
I'm gonna have to remember that quote. I appreciate it. I believe next up is Mr. Cord. No, wait a minute. Reverend Tyler? Okay. Reverend Tyler, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good
Can
afternoon.
you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good.
State your name for the record,
Great.
and please begin your testimony.
Absolutely. Mark Kelly Tyler, Senior Pastor of Bethel AME and Co-Director of Power, Live Free, and glad to be here to testify alongside wonderful colleagues, Gail Lax and Amy Mann, and so many others who couldn't be here, but we're here to represent them. I want to thank you as well, Councilmember Jones and your team, and all of council for being here and for getting us to this place. But I'm reminded, as I continue to hear the name of Walter Wallace today, that the last time that I stood before this committee, or a committee, I should say, of council, testifying about reforms and changing policing in Philadelphia, I was interrupted by my 16-year-old daughter who walked in the door to tell me that they just killed another one. I was a little shaken because I thought maybe she saw something wrong, but she had just seen the Instagram footage of the killing of Walter Wallace that had happened moments before. And you may remember that I excused myself to go down to be with other clergy as I think Gail Lax finished my testimony. I want to say that, many of us can sit here today and pat ourselves on the back. Power's been working on this for a long time. We presented this same demand to council in 2019 when Malcolm Jenkins and Kiera Bradford Gray and Larry Krasner all joined us in a town hall. But the fact of the matter is we're here because of all of those tragic deaths. That we're here only because of George Floyd, only because of Breonna Taylor, only because of Ahmaud Arbery. Had it not been for their lives being taken on last year, this would have been what we thought, a 5 to 10 year fight to even get this type of a hearing. So I think we need to frame it in that way and always remember that this is not about us, but it's about those who don't have a chance to have accountability ever again. There are two issues I want to add to what's been said. And I want to thank you, Councilmember Jones, because, it is evident to us by what you have presented that you clearly heard us and that you captured the spirit of what we said in those town halls. You asked the question earlier to the director of Nicole, and you asked her who has the best police oversight in the country. And what I want to say is that if Philadelphia City Council adopts what you have presented without stripping it, without taking the teeth out of it, and fully funding it and giving it independence, the answer to your question will be Philadelphia. Everyone in the country knows it, that this is an excellent piece of legislation. Now, certainly, as you know, we're never satisfied. We could throw more things in it, but I want to say to you that this is such a great start and will take us leaps and bounds about where we have. But again, to council members, please do not tamper with this. Do not tinker with it. The only thing you should do is make it stronger and put more money behind it. Two issues. One is the selection panel. We always envisioned an independent commission. We thought that meant directly elected by the citizens, but we understand that this is a process. We can't understand in any way would have involvement, giving the inherent Congress in that he is the person who hires and oversees the department. And so the mayor should have a say in the selection panel, that the selection panel should be totally controlled at this point by city council. And we would add that it would be, I think, a more transparent move if the public safety committee that has been zeroed in on this, not to say other council members have not been concerned, but the some of you who have been zeroed in on this for the last 8 months would offer the names of the selection panel for the rest of city council to vote up or to vote down, that would be, in our opinion, a fair compromise and at least give us some measure of some independence. The second thing is the budget. Now, there is no way that we can continue to do this with a budget of $500,000 or even $3 million. At very best, you're going to need at least $13 to $15 million for staffing, based on what we have seen in the legislation and people we've spoken to, and another $7 to $10 million in hard costs for infrastructure. That would put it on par as well with internal affairs, and it's something that has to happen. I'll say this final thing for those who say we can't find the money. The mayor's new budget has about $12 million a year over, I think, 5 years for street sweeping of trash. If we can find $12 million a year for trash, then certainly we can find at least that and more to save Black lives. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you to Power Live Free. Quick question. How many hearings, listening sessions, workshops did your group perform with this as the main topic?
We did 8 altogether, and we are thankful that council participated in all the public safety committee, in fact, and there were others who dropped in, but public safety was present, at least one person and multiple staff members in each of those town halls from July through October.
And could you briefly capsulize what you heard in those listening sessions?
Sure, I'll toss it to Gail Lax, who's again our co-chair. The folk on this team, really live with this. Go ahead, Gail.
Well, we looked at what different cities were doing across the country in oversight. We did hear some aspects from each city that we wanted to apply to Philadelphia, but we knew Philadelphia would need its own strong oversight commission. We heard about the long history of police unions and of police problems over many, many years. And I guess what I want to say is that piece of information that I said in my testimony about the research from Indiana, that strong police oversight is key, and this is what we heard. And this is also from some research that Susan Hudson presented at our town hall. So thank you, Susan. Strong police oversight is what decreases shootings in a city, what decreases shootings of citizens by police and any kind of shootings of police. It decreases violent crime rates, it decreases racial profiling, and when there's a strong oversight agency, it is what helps build trust also. So I think those are the important key points.
So before I recognize Member Gim, I want to thank you publicly for the strong advocacy for this commission, and say to you that we genuinely listened. Like, I listen to testimony all the time, but however, the clarion sound of truth comes through, and on behalf of my members, we want to thank you for doing this. Unless I'm mistaken, you don't get paid for this. And so we are.
So you're right. There are only a couple of us who are actually staff, but the vast majority of the people who do hours and hours and hours are actually volunteers, and so we really thank them. And Councilmember Jones, I just want to add for the record that we also support the staff of the PAC, the Police Advisory Commission. We don't say that enough, and I think sometimes people believe that, our wanting it replaced has something to do with the staff. but we have confidence in Anthony Arachi, the interim executive director. We had a great relationship with Hans Minos, with Kelvin Anderson, and we've learned a lot from them. They just never had the structure to make them successful, and we want the record to reflect that.
So I remember President Clark sitting with directors and sometimes, if I'm allowed to say, Michael Cord, to talk about the negotiations of how this should evolve. And I'm going to use the word evolve because we had a very different council composition when we first started. And it was that law, the advisory law, the 500,000 budget was at the time the best we thought we could do. So your point about these deaths that have made it possible for us to be at this moment in time is very, very appropriate. And with that, I'm going to recognize Member Gim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I also just want to express gratitude. I mean, I want to express gratitude to all the testifiers. I think it goes without saying, but sometimes it does help to weigh in and be very explicit. We don't do it after every single individual who speaks, but just want to underscore how much value all the testifiers have done to advance this issue over many years. I think it's something that could have been, you know, I'm glad that I'm part of the council body that sees it go through. And I'm glad to be a partner and on the Public Safety Committee because it's been a priority, and especially it's been a priority of our committee chairman, Curtis Jones Jr. I know this has come up, Councilmember Jones, several times, but I think one of the questions is, you know, concerns about the amount and where ultimately the you know, the commission would be funded towards. We heard earlier Mr. Schuford talking a little bit about 1% being the minimum. And I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, just because I know there have been a lot of documents that have circulated, if you might give clarity to what ultimately City Council envisions the broader budget ultimately becoming, if that's possible to do.
So it's difficult to price out a car until you know its subcomponents and parts. However, we want to make sure that as we try to attract talent to this commission, whether it's investigators, whether it is support staff, that we get folk that are up for the job technically and are able to compensate them justly. So with that being said, we know that in any new organization or tooling up, your main expense is not going to be in the first year. Like we hope that in July that we give some portion of a bigger budget to them for this year as they go about the recruitment, interview, staffing, location, buying of furniture, things of that nature to gear up. Come next July, we want to have a fully funded commission, wherever that cost may take us based on functionality of the commission. And so I can tell you, and I'm speaking only as an independent elected official, we're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million before July, and then upwards to the neighborhood of 10 million. And I know my attorney is looking at me throwing stop talking signs, but I feel confident that we're going to give this commission what it needs budgetarily to be successful.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that's important for the, you know, there's a phase 1, 2, 3, basically. And as the council, as the committee chairman said, by July 1st, 2021, 2.78 million is the goal. And by phase 3, in 2023 of July, the goal is to be over 13 million. And that's been in our briefing documents, committee chairman, so I'm not, don't have it, and I think what we're trying to share to the public is that we will be above that 1%. And we hear the concerns and the commitment. I just wanted to put on the record that the phase 1, 2, 3 does grow. And by FY23, we will certainly be over the 1%. We expect to have dozens and dozens of staff members. This is not, this is not a volunteer effort. It's going to be taken seriously. And I know all of us will need to keep our eyes on this to ensure that it holds to that path. But I just wanted to thank the committee chair because I know he is deeply committed to this, and just wanted to put on the record a little bit more about what the funding might look like.
From your lips to the finance director's ears. All right?
Let us make it so. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Derek Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo the sentiments made by a number of my colleagues for the work and advocacy that have brought us to this point for this conversation. I remember a few years ago when we were at R Street, I think United Methodist Church, talking about some of this work and the work that needs to go on, which led us to this point. I definitely want to give kudos to Councilmember Jones and your staff for all the work you've done and for all the people that testified. I also want to thank Power Live Free for the conversations that you convened over the summer and it provided me with quite a bit of information in addition to the other research that I've done regarding this issue and how we continue to move forward to address these concerns. I'm curious from the perspective of Power, what do you see as ongoing engagement after the legislation? And I don't want to make assumptions, but I believe that after the legislation is passed and we're continuing to build and grow this entity, how do you see that conversation engagement going forward in reference to educating the public about the new Citizens Police Oversight Commission and other work forthgoing?
That's a great question, and thank you so much, Councilmember Green, for all the times that you were there and even the follow-up conversations. So we don't see this as a one and done. The language that Councilmember Jones just used, evolving, is the right way to think about this. That this is the conversation with Chicago. We had Chicago folk on twice, an alderman and also the director of their oversight agency, and it seems like after talking to them and then Oakland and San Francisco, we're maybe 20 years behind Chicago. If this passes, like you said, it's going to catch us up, but we won't be right there on par just yet. And they are themselves acknowledging that what they have is not far enough. So that each time you get to one place and clear one hurdle, it's about the next thing. So, for example, to have some real independence, we need to start talking about the hiring process, next. Oakland and San Francisco can hire and fire their police commissioner, which is important about accountability because that person is going to be accountable to whoever brings them in and can send them packing out the door. We now know that would take another home rule charter change. And so I think that it is about continuing to do what we've done with the town halls to share information with the rest of the city and with council about what other cities are doing, because sometimes I think we don't know what's possible. In fact, let me just say this one more thing, that I continue to hear people say, well, legal says we can't do this. Legal says we can't do that. We strongly believe that, council would really benefit greatly before it just accepts the word of the lawyers on behalf of the city to get a second and third opinion from attorneys in other cities that have done some of these things. Because you're right, no question is going to be challenged legally by forces that don't want strong police oversight. But at the same time, I don't think just because you get one legal opinion, you stop. We wouldn't do that on our personal affairs, and we shouldn't do that with this either. So great question, but yes, the work has to continue.
Thank you so much.
And just to follow up on that, Councilmember Jones, as
Sure.
an attorney who also used to, be a member of the law department, and I have often taken the perspective that the law department provides great guidance for both the city, being both the mayor's office as well as the legislative branch. But we have various opinions and perspectives on matters, and until a matter is settled, sometimes in a court of law, and we still have a Marbury versus Madison moment that we have not had locally. I know that's something that my brother, Attorney Court, is familiar with. Some of these issues will still be debated and discussed as we go forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Green. Chair now recognizes Member Bass. Member Bass. We'll come back to her. Chair now recognizes Member Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I first want to echo the sentiments of you and Councilmember Green and just thank Power and the entire Live Free campaign. I thought the information sessions were extremely informative. I think, like it was said earlier, it really helped provide insight as it relates to this work and what's being done around the country. Just very briefly, though, really, I just wanted to say thank you and I appreciate the work, and I think will help get us here. But earlier, one of the comments that Reverend Tyler talked about was just the process as it relates to selection. I think all of us are going to continue to fight for budget stuff, and that's what we do every single day in this legislative branch. But as far as the process, I didn't catch everything you said. I'm wondering if you could just do a deeper dive as it relates to the process as it currently is constructed in the legislation, as well as the recommendation that you had. That's my only question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you to everybody involved in this panel, because it really helped inform where we are right now.
Thanks for the question, Councilmember Thomas. So listen, this is to, I think for us, the linchpin. You can have all the funding that you want, and you can have all the Councilmember Jones, this can go through with all of the teeth that you put in it. But if the founding commission is not right, and if it is somehow, if we get the wrong 9 commissioners, everything else falls apart. And so that's why we believed initially that it should be an elected board, but we get it. So we're going to, for this session, we're fine with an appointed board by city council. But if you have only a 5-person selection panel, you've already given up 2 of those to the mayor, who, by the way, the legislation and the spirit of it and the call for it was to make this independent, right? The PAC is under the mayor's office. It was presumably to take it away from the mayor's office. So why in the world would any mayor have the right to be involved in this process? That's the first thing. So to take the mayor out of the process completely and then let council work it out. Within the council, we believe that if you then do a process that says the Public Safety Committee that has done the deepest dive on this will recommend and nominate the names of the selection panel, the 5 people who will then go out and bring back for council the first commissioners. The selection panel will then, those 5 names will then be recommended to city council as a whole, who can vote them up or reject them or take 4 and tell us, bring us one more name until we're all happy. And that at least gives the community some sense that there is some kind of involvement. Right now, it feels like to me and the people that I've spoken to as though we've worked hard to get here and now it's just been snatched out of our hands. And again, this is not to impugn anyone's integrity, but if the mayor is the mayor and the police commissioner reports up to you, they've already told us, they said to us that it's an inherent conflict of interest. That's what the mayor's office said in our meetings with them. So then take yourself out of it. There's no business for it. It doesn't fit here. And then again, to let public safety, as you're doing now, even having these conversations, recommend those names to council. That this is the most critical part of what we're doing at this moment for right now.
Thank you, Reverend Tyler. I appreciate it. I think that's again some important information, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for always be willing to convene these tough conversations so we can make sure that we do it in a way where we get it right. So thank you, everybody.
That's what we do, Member Thomas. That's what we do. Member Bass, are you back?
I am back, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Chair recognizes Member Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to, number one, thank you for your leadership and for bringing this issue to the forefront of what's happening in the city and really what's happening around the nation. I just really wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank the advocates for all of the work that they're doing. And a lot of the people who are on this line, for example, Bilal, who's been on this issue for a very long time, and of course, Michael Court, and of course, the pastor, have been out here in the streets fighting. And we're not fighting against the police. We're fighting for the treatment that we deserve in our community. So we want to just be absolutely clear that we deserve to be treated with dignity and respect throughout the legal process if we should happen to come in contact with the legal system. So I just really wanted to give a round of thanks to everyone for being here today. This is very, very important. And, this is going to really make a difference, I believe, in how we police here in the city of Philadelphia. And that's so much about what this conversation and other conversations really need to be about, which is how do we change the way of policing? I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when we thought about policing, we thought one way, and we think completely differently about it now. And that's very important that we stay on that course, don't go backwards, and just see progress along the way. And this is an important step towards that progress. So thanks to all, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Member Bass, and thank you for always being on the issue of criminal justice reform. I appreciate it. I just wanted to tell this panel that sometimes you have to get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations in order to get some type of understanding, even if you wind up not agreeing. But in order to have those uncomfortable conversations, that's only how things become real, how things become relevant, and how systemic change, lasting change can occur. So we appreciate, we appreciate having the tough conversations. So with that, Samantha Williams, will you please read the next panel to testify?
Michael Mellon and Tracy Tripp.
Hello, my name is Michael Mellon, where I work at the Police Accountability Unit at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. The PAU focuses on representing indigent clients who are victims of systemic police misconduct in the city of Philadelphia. And I would like to thank Council for inviting the Defender Association for holding this hearing and everyone who came to speak today. And I would like to give special thanks to Councilmember Jones for his leadership on this issue and his staff who have worked tirelessly to bring this bill to fruition. In my role at the Defender, I've become very familiar with how police oversight functions, or rather fails to function. Fully functional police oversight requires cooperation between all of the criminal justice stakeholders, the police, the district attorney, the defender, the judiciary, but most importantly, an independent civilian police oversight board to represent the community. Cooperation requires transparency and actual accountability through independent oversight. The CPOC bill provides the best opportunity to create such an environment that can hold all of the criminal justice stakeholders accountable for police oversight. Without it, we are left with a criminal justice system that fosters bad policing models, racial profiling, and leads to unsolved crimes. This breeds more distrust, exacerbating already bad policing, and increasing the number of unsolved crimes and the reliance on racial profiling in a vicious cycle that leads to where we are today. The current lack of accountability within the department breeds more misconduct. For example, the Inquirer has a great series highlighting the lack of accountability in the homicide unit, leading to reverse convictions, lost freedom, high monetary settlement costs due to those behaviors. Disgraced homicide detectives Philip Nordo, James Pitts, and other officers are placed on restricted duty while they're being investigated at the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, where the department's real-time crime center is located. The real-time crime center manages the system of police cameras throughout the city. Officers can operate those cameras remotely and did so during the Walter Wallace protest last fall. In fact, an officer was operating the camera that should have captured the rushing of that young woman's vehicle in West Philadelphia that was posted to social media. I say should have because the operator panned the camera away from the vehicle just as the officers rushed it. Only after the incident was over, after the windows were smashed, after the passengers were pulled from the vehicle and the woman's baby was taken from her, did the camera pan back. The defender does not know who was operating the camera at the time, who may have ordered the camera to pan away, whether any of the officers in the real-time crime center that night were on restricted duty because they were being investigated, or if any of those officers are currently under investigation for this incident. But more importantly, neither does the public. The department's system of accountability creates an environment where the bad cops are put in positions to hide the behavior of other bad cops, and the department keeps the public in the dark. This example highlights the need for transparent and independent oversight of the police department. The police department cannot oversee itself. The oversight must be robust with a significant budget. CPOC must be transparent with the misconduct that exists within the department and inform the public about what it finds. The more transparent the CPOC is about police misconduct, the more knowledgeable the community becomes about the department. The more aware the community is about the misconduct within the department, the better they are to advocate for more reforms within the department. And the better the department becomes in the community's eyes, the less distrust will exist, leading to more cooperation in the city for safety for all citizens of Philadelphia. The CPOC bill is a first step, but it is a dramatic step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mellon, for your testimony. Will the next witness state your name for the record?
And good afternoon, Council President Clark, Councilmember Jones, and members of City Council. My name is Tracy Tripp, and I am an Assistant District Attorney and Supervisor of the Special Investigations Unit of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. Special Investigations handles allegations of criminal municipal corruption, including police misconduct. Police misconduct includes everything from officer-involved shootings to off-duty domestic violence incidents to allegations of theft, evidence tampering, and perjury. Today, I am testifying in support of Bill number 210074 on behalf of the District Attorney's Office. The DAO wholeheartedly supports the creation and implementation of the Civilian Police Oversight Committee. Transparency, accessibility, and accountability in how we as a city investigate police misconduct is as necessary to the criminal legal system as the police themselves. Now, many of my points have already been made, so I am going to try and be more concise than my written testimony. But this bill will help fill a gap in the reporting of police misconduct. There are types of misconduct and policing issues that the District Attorney's Office simply can't address because they're not inherently criminal. Verbal abuse is corrosive to community relations, but it's not necessarily criminal in nature. Institutional racism and implicit bias, which have truly destructive outcomes on communities and contribute to higher rates of police encounters for people of color, it's something that the DAO can address on a case-by-case basis if it's brought out in a specific defendant's case, but it's not something that we can address on the necessary systemic level. The CPOC can tackle these issues in transparent public hearings, which complement the DAO's reliance on other limited criminal cases for specific individuals, or secret grand jury hearings, which may or may not ultimately result in public findings. It can also bring things to light the DAO doesn't even know exist. I was horrified listening to the testimony earlier of a gentleman from Project Home who was describing an incident that had been recorded by them and reported to IA, and they felt very underserved by the outcomes in that case. And I realized that something that is missing from my written testimony is the fact that internal affairs, when they're called out for situations like that and do those investigations, They make the determination if probable, if an initial complaint rises to the level of a criminal act. And so it is entirely possible that a complaint, such as the one described by the gentleman from Project Home, would never come to the DA's office. Because if Internal Affairs, after its review, determines that they don't think it rises to the level of needing a probable cause determination by the DAO, they won't send it here. And so we would have no way of knowing that that sort of potential assaultive behavior needs a closer look by the DAO. Concurrent investigation and the creation of a CPOC would fix that gap. So we also have other limitations. Prosecutors are, by definition, members of law enforcement, and we work closely with the police to investigate and prosecute crimes, even in the majority of our police misconduct investigations. PPD's Office of Professional Responsibility has hundreds of staff overseeing and disciplining thousands of sworn personnel. The SIU, by comparison, leverages roughly 2 full-time county detectives to investigate misconduct. Additionally, the profound fracture of trust between law enforcement and many Philadelphia communities extends to our office, as is fair given our history. People absolutely must have some place to go to report complaints that is not a law enforcement agency. They need some place to lodge complaints that will not force them back through the criminal justice system they're grieving. And it's not just civilians. Police need somewhere to go to report that's not a law enforcement agency. We, in special investigations, receive anonymous complaints where it is clear from the kind and the quality of the information that the reporter must be a police officer. We've received complaints from police officers who plead with us to keep their identity secret because of their fear of retaliation by fellow officers. Hardworking, decent police officers are scared. They are scared of reporting misconduct by their colleagues and their supervisors. They will gladly serve a homicide warrant or engage an armed robbery suspect where they fear to engage internal affairs. Retaliation is real, it is pervasive, and it can have career-long consequences. CPOC's transparency can combat retaliation and community distrust. The CPOC's involvement in disciplinary hearings, recommendations, and reporting outcomes is critical to battling a reluctance to report misconduct amongst both civilians and PPD personnel. When disciplinary proceedings are not as public as the acts that initiated them, the public is left to guess when and even whether there will be consequences for the misconduct. If a use of force incident doesn't result in criminal charges or discipline, people deserve to know why. Likewise, if an officer accused of a use of force violation, for example, is exonerated by the department, that should also be publicly explained and acknowledged. If the department and the CPOC are reaching consistently different determinations, then that can begin a broader necessary discussion. We build trust every time Philadelphia sees the entire process and knows that complainants had a chance to participate and have their voices and concerns heard by an independent body made up of people who have no relationship with the same department that they believe wronged them. And that means more effective investigations for non-police related crime, because people who have trust in the process will give information to the police and to the DAO. The keys to the Citizen Police Oversight Commission's success are teeth and funding. This legislation envisions a fundamental shift in how Philadelphia addresses police misconduct. It holds the promise of improving the daily relationship between everyday people and sworn law enforcement, but it will be a pointless endeavor if this legislation is enacted and then not adequately staffed, funded, and given the power to enforce its mandates. Tying the budget for the CPOC to the budget for the police department may be daunting, but it would serve a practical and a symbolic purpose. You cannot have strong, trusted, ethical policing without oversight. Tying the budgets together reflects that fact. A citizen complaint may not always get the result, or a citizen complainant may not always get the result that they were looking for when they made their complaint. But in my experience in the DAO, the process is often more important for people than the outcome. People need to be seen, heard, and have their experience acknowledged. And this bill and this commission can achieve that. And the DAO very much looks forward to partnering with the CPOC. So thank you to the members of this committee for allowing me, on behalf of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, to testify in support of Bill number 210074. I am happy to answer any and all questions that you may have.
Ms. Tripp, thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for your help in flushing around the issues related to the establishment of this commission. I do not see any questions teed up, so therefore I'm going to ask Ms. Williams to introduce the next panel, and thank you all for your testimony.
Michael Cord and Paul Hetzner.
Mr. Cord, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I didn't know if I was going first or Paul Hetznicker, but I'm prepared to go first. That's fine.
You are now duly informed. You are going first, sir.
I appreciate that. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman Curtis Jones. Also, I want to thank President Darrell Clark and all members of City Council. I certainly can't forget Samantha Williams, the Director of Legislation and Policy in your office. I don't think we'd be here doing this if it were not for her. Having said that, unlike what I normally do when I speak off the cuff, I'm going to read from a prepared statement. And I submitted that so that it could be part of the official record. And also I put something in writing because when I think about and talk about the need to end police brutality, I get really emotional. I get really hyper. And I want to make sure that I don't say the wrong thing out of anger. And that anger comes from the fact that I'm a lawyer today because I was born and raised in North Philly, 20th and York. And I'll never forget, I was probably a 5th grade, 6th grade student at Masterman. And there was an older gentleman who lived in the neighborhood. He was mentally disabled, 40 years old. His name was Roger. Now, we as kids, ignorant, didn't know any better, so we would tease him and call him retarded Roger. But he was one of us. He was one of the neighborhood. Long story short, Roger, 40 years old, had the mental capacity of maybe a 5, 6-year-old. He was hired to do part-time work at a corner store in North Philly at 19th and Cumberland. And it really wasn't any big responsibilities, just moving boxes here and there. And one day after the store closed, must have been 6 or 7 o'clock, he's in the store moving boxes around. 2 white police officers arrive on the scene, assume it's a burglary, and come in blasting, killing Roger instantly. And it didn't make the news. There was no investigation. It was just a black man killed in North Philly and nothing happened. And I swore to myself that I would do whatever I can to protect not only the Rogers of the world, but all black people in poor neighborhoods. Because for us, we didn't have an officer friendly. Police officers were like an occupying army. Now, that's not to say that all police officers are bad, just like not all lawyers are bad, not all auto dealers are bad, not all plumbers are bad. But the difference is when a plumber screws up, it's just your toilet that's broken. When a lawyer screws up, it's just your case that's lost. But when a police officer screws up, that's literally a matter of life and death. So we have to monitor this. And having said that, let me jump right into my statement. It'll probably take maybe 3 to 4 minutes, and I'm not going to read it all. Again, I already submitted it to your staff, Chairman Jones, but I'll just highlight the pertinent portion. It goes like this. I respectfully submit this written statement in connection with my testimony today to enthusiastically support Bill number 210074, Citizens Police Oversight Commission CPOC proposal, as a major first step toward not only the end of police abuse and brutality that occur with impunity, but also the end of police abuse and brutality per se. And let me digress very briefly because I want people to understand why I speak with such passion as a black man about police brutality. People often say, you played a race card, Mike, that it's always a racial thing for you. They say we're not in a racist or racial society anymore. After all, America elected Barack Obama, so we're all good. And I say, okay, yeah, they did elect him and re-elected him. But let me ask you this. If tomorrow, all things being equal, same car, same job, same income, same clothing, you're driving from Temple University in North Philly at 10 p.m. and lights and sirens from a police car pull up behind you near Broad and Master. And as that cop approaches you, you could be a black driver or a white driver. All things being equal, which would you choose? The answer is obvious. Why is the answer obvious? Because of racism in America, and nobody in America would dispute the point I just made. Not one person would volunteer to be that black driver. Remember, I said all things being equal, same car, same job, same income, same clothing, but you could choose to be a black driver or a white driver. Why would everybody with brains choose to be a white driver? I think the answer is clear, and that's why there's a need for something like CPOC. I go on to write the following. As pointed out in council news on February 21 of 2021, CPOC will be, quote, independent, bold, and reflective of the geographic and population diversity of the city and designed in a way that answers demands of the community, unquote. Moreover, it, and this is direct quote, will have the authority to issue subpoenas and compel witness testimony or documents for investigations, retain their own chief counsel separate from the City of Philadelphia's law department, and make disciplinary and police recommendations to the police administration. They will receive and investigate all citizens' complaints against police. In addition, CPOC will be investigating all incidents when an officer discharges a firearm and all incidents where someone dies or is seriously injured during a police interaction, unquote. And then it goes on to the bill itself. The language in the bill itself points out that CPOC, quote, may recommend charges and discipline, unquote. And I continue in the letter, I'm skipping some of it, but again, it's all included in the letter. I continue by writing, this bill is not only important, it is also essential. In the profound words of 19th century English historian and politician Lord Acton, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when combined with racism, that absolute power becomes abusive and brutal as well as deadly. And then I go into the history of policing in America, and I'm not going to read it all, but let me just read the pertinent part. Racism was inherent in policing in America from the very beginning. In fact, municipal police departments, as they are now known, began as quote-unquote slave patrols. The first official one started in 1704 in the colony of Carolina and then spread throughout the South until 1865. The laws creating those patrols deputized civilian white men to, as documented by Western Michigan University history professor Dr. Sally Haddon in her book entitled Slave Patrols, these men, deputized white men, were permitted to, quote, engage in the monitoring of rigid pass requirements for blacks, breaking up large gatherings of blacks, searching slave quarters randomly, and inflicting impromptu punishments of blacks. Think about that. That was the responsibility of the slave patrols in 1704. This is 2021, and we have the same monitoring of rigid pass requirements through driver licenses. Also breaking up large gatherings, young black men standing in the corner shooting the breeze. Also searching slave quarters randomly. That's the real deal in homes in North Philly. You know, this stuff never gets into the courts, but folks who live in the hood, we know that cops kick in our doors every single day because they know you're not going to do a damn thing about it. You can't afford your own private attorney. It's your word against the cop's word. So when you look at what happened with the responsibilities of the slave patrols in 1704, the same kind of thing is going on in terms of them monitoring the hood in terms of black people. Let me try to wrap this up in about 2 minutes. Then I add in this letter, fast forward to 1979, when Philadelphia became the first city in the country to be sued by the U.S. Justice Department for committing and condoning, quote, widespread and severe acts of police brutality. Now think about that. The first city to be prosecuted by the federal government was not a city in Alabama, was not a city in Georgia, was not a city in Mississippi. It was right here in Philadelphia. What does that tell you? And let me skip some other parts of the letter and just continue. Then I say, as I pointed out earlier in this testimony, the remarkably impressive bill number 210074 is the first step toward the end of police abuse and brutality. I say first step because there is much more to be done. And that more is the responsibility of the state legislature. And I know this is not within the jurisdiction of city council, but it's the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is Legislative Act 111 of 1968. In the letter, I write the following. The biggest problem regarding unchecked police abuse and brutality is Legislative Act 111 of 1968, which is a state law that allows a civilian arbitrator from the pro-police American Arbitration Association to, quote, this is in the language of this legislation, quote, ignore findings of fact, unquote, regarding abuse and brutality deemed founded by Internal Affairs and the Police Board of Inquiry. That act also incredibly allows the arbitrator to, quote, reject the punishment, unquote, assessed by Internal Affairs and the Police Board of Inquiry. And this is shocking, but it's in the legislation. Even if the acts as charged have been proven. So even if we get what we're trying to get through CPAC locally, we have the problem of this legislative act. But let's one step at a time. Let's do this thing here with the city and then move on to the state legislation. Then I go on to point out some examples, and we don't have time for me to go into, but some horrific examples of police brutality, police misconduct, police corruption, and police killing of people where the officers not only got their jobs back, but got back pay. Again, I don't have enough time to go into it, but in this letter, I name the officers, I name the incidents, and I indicate when it happened. Let me wrap this up by saying this. City Council is doing a great job through you and your committee, Mr. Chairman, to make CPAC a reality. But I would also strongly encourage City Council to consider issuing a resolution to the state legislature, asking the state legislature to do something regarding that legislative act. Finally, I write this. In conclusion, I enthusiastically support Bill number 210074, Citizens Police Oversight Commission proposal as a major, a historic, and a long overdue first step toward not only the end of police abuse and brutality that occur with impunity, but also the end of police abuse and brutality per se. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Professor Cord. I just want to know, is there any way that city council members can come and monitor your class at Temple? That's all I want to know.
Not only is the answer yes, but I'll roll out the red carpet.
You got it. Thank you so much. Who's next, Samantha?
Paul Hettinger.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We will hold questions until after Mr. Hettinger does his testimony. So please stick around. Mr. Court. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chairman Jones, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to address City Council members, President Clark, and the rest of the members here today. Unfortunately, I'm having a problem with my camera, so I don't know whether you can see me or not. I've tried to activate the camera and are unable to do that at this point. Can you see me, Councilman Jones?
No, but I hear you clearly.
Okay, all right. Then let me testify based on my experience, 35 years as a criminal defense attorney and civil rights lawyer. I had the great honor of appearing before your committee over 10 years ago on behalf of the National Lawyers Guild. I was able to present testimony regarding the long history of police misconduct in this city. I have served as one of the guardians of the Constitution, both in the criminal cases as well as in the civil rights cases, trying to vindicate those rights of those individuals who have been violated at the hands of the police. And I state this, it's in the words of Charles Ogletree, who was a former public defender, as I was, as well as a professor at Harvard. that the defense attorney serves as the last sentinel of the Constitution. And I offer my testimony shaped by my experience while serving on my daily watch over the Constitution, one of the many guardians who serve the city one citizen at a time. And I truly believe that, not only from my experience as a criminal defense attorney, but also in my experience as a civil rights lawyer. One of the things I want to begin with is 10 years ago or almost 11 years ago when I testified before this honorable committee, I pointed out the fact that given the history of police misconduct institutionally and the deep inherent racism in the system, that there needed to be a cultural change within the department. And that change could not be based upon the cycle of crisis management. So we've gone back, as Your Honor well knows, Councilman Jones, we go back decades in looking at police misconduct in the city as Professor Ford has just laid out in detail. That history is indicative of systemic institutional corruption and racism. And that institutional corruption and racism has to be ferreted out. And it's not just one bad apple at a time, it's tossing the entire apple cart. And CPOC does that. And at the end of my testimony 11 years ago, one of the things I offered was this. When I went into the roots of police misconduct and this cyclical crisis management, what I said was this in the conclusion. And I want to use that as the springboard of what I want to say today about this phenomenal effort that the City Council is embarking upon now. And one of the steps that was required was a real mechanism for civilian accountability. A seat at the table, whether at cabinet level or under deputy mayor, is the only way to restore community faith in the police department. Civilian oversight must be the goal. This long-term solution will require a real commitment on the part of all the stakeholders, City Council, the administration, the police command, and the community. I said that 11 years ago, and I am so excited to appear before you again, Chairman Jones, and offer the following. We have, in my work as a civil rights lawyer, representing clients who have been beaten, who have been abused, who have been falsely arrested, falsely imprisoned, whose family members have been killed by police. What we have seen over the course of time is this warrior policing model, which others have testified to, but I want to offer my insight on it. Last June, the commissioner offered a crime prevention violence reduction plan, which was really a rehashing of the old systematic warrior model. Published within days of the protests last summer, the plan from the commissioner is a blueprint for the future predicated on the failed policies of the past. And I say that for a number of reasons. In order to reshape this warrior policing model, we have to get to the bottom of this notion that somehow the police department must serve as a military occupying force in communities. CPOC can provide the oversight for this transformation from a warrior model to something very different, something beyond just a guardian model, but some community-based policing model that is not just stated community-based policing in term, but in reality. As demonstrated by the police's most recent effort to engage with the community just several weeks ago, this approach has utilized illegal stops and enforcement of quality life offenses. Problem-oriented policing, the bureaucratic label given to warrior policing model, is predicated on developing analytics to track crime trends, locate hot spots, and deploy resources. In other words, warriors to those hot spots. We have to find an alternative to this warrior policing model. CPOC is the way forward to alter this relationship, because unlike the military, which has a civilian oversight through the executive branch of the government, the police department doesn't really have an oversight model other than the mayor, possibly city council, and the efforts that you've made to call and challenge some of the underlying policies, but without an actual functioning review board, as CPOC offers, we are not going to tether the police department to real change. And this will do so. And that's why I'm very excited that the city council has chosen this particular model and this effort. Currently, the community policing refers to police initiatives that incorporate a component of community outreach in the context of problem-oriented policing or the warrior policing model. True community-based policing necessitates a partnership between residents of the community and the police. Problem-oriented policing does not. In fact, the problem-oriented policing, the warrior model, often views the public as the source of the problem within the police department rather than a solution. So what I would ask that this august body do in establishing CPOC is to empower CPOC in a way that no other review board has been empowered. Maybe the closest would be Newark. Newark provides a model, and I think Newark is an example. And I know this city council has examined very carefully the models throughout the country. But I think what we need to do is establish a way in which CPOC provides for the basis upon which there is not only systematic review of police misconduct in the department, individual review of cases and officers, in particular officers that have repeatedly demonstrated misconduct over a course of time, who have been protected by internal affairs in the internal affairs process, who are unreachable, unfortunately, by anyone other than those who can bring civil litigation through the courts. CPOC provides a brand new melding of this very progressive view of community involvement, as well as accountability and transparency, which has long been the struggle we have had in Philadelphia in an effort to achieve a more just and reasonable engagement with the police. So I am very proud to appear today, and I appreciate the opportunity, not only as a civil rights litigator and as well as a criminal defense litigator for almost 35 years, but also as a person who's committed my entire career to struggling for justice for those who have suffered at the hands of police misconduct. I think under the circumstances, we need to re-examine the police officers' June 2020 plan, its community basis, policing-based involvement, which is, I think, no more than another extension of the warrior policing model. And I think that CPOC can do so and ask real strident questions to the police commissioner and the department to question whether or not the policing analytical model of over-policing with surveillance, with over-engagement and warrior policing with the community can question in an effective way and provide answers to those questions in a new direction through this new community informed community oversight model. And so I laud City Council and the efforts that all of you have made to do this, and I look forward to seeing a real effective engagement between the CPOC and the police department in a way that's never happened historically in this city.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I was sitting here listening to you, and some of the aspects of this commission, its independence, its separation from the administration, and to a degree, council after it is launched, is so very important to get. And I don't want to get in trouble with my colleagues, but City Council actually has a council ethics committee. And to my recollection and my years of being here, it has never met. But the ethics board meets regularly and takes on issues related to our governance. And that balance, I think, is appropriate. And so it's hard for me to understand how you can get internal police organizations to regulate themselves. So I guess my question to both of you is, and this is a little off, before the use of cell phones to capture some of the injustices, has there been tracking of how many people were lost because we couldn't document, and how this technology has changed justice in America?
That is an absolutely profound statement with respect to the impact that this has had. If we look, and certainly I'll defer to Michael, a good friend of mine, on the historical aspects, but if we look back at the reignition of the civil rights movement, certainly the exposition of the injustices in a visual way often motivated action, motivated social justice movements and grassroots development of movements that brought into play that notion of accountability. The point you make, Chairman Jones, is significant, because without that, no, we did not have tracking. We would have police misconduct over and over again. I could subpoena a police officer's personnel file in the context of a criminal representation or in a civil rights case. And I would see over and over again multiple instances of police misconduct that went unabated, unchallenged, unreviewed, essentially unreviewed other than an internal affairs rubber stamp of that activity, and unchallenged by the internal workings of the department. Yes, what I think the third eye that you talked about, the level of consciousness raised through the ability of a cell phone to capture the injustices that have occurred, especially for young black men throughout this country, at the hands of aggressive policing forces, that has transformed our notion of accountability. That third eye is essentially what CPOC would function institutionally, as that third eye, the way in which I believe CPOC could see through the internal protection that internal affairs provides to its officers, rather than exposing them to the light of day. I think CPOC can provide that. But I leave it to the experts, and I certainly leave it to you, Chairman Jones, to decide where the Ethics Committee would come into play on that. That's beyond my realm. But I certainly agree with you that that third eye notion is analogous, the video camera is analogous to what CPOC could ultimately achieve.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add to the great points made by Paul Hetznicker, not only a great attorney, but certainly one of my colleagues. We look at situations like George Floyd and we say, wow, this was horrible. And it certainly was. But nobody has any ideas of how many George Floyds there's been in America since 1776. Can you imagine if a white police officer would do that in broad daylight with 12 to 15 people watching, with or without cameras? What happens in the dark of the night in the back alleys? We have no idea, but the closest we can get to what goes on in terms of police brutality and certain police shootings, there's a great website, and I encourage people to go to it. It's well researched. It's called mappingpoliceviolence.org. mappingpoliceviolence.org, and it's so well respected that major universities rely on it. So the closest we can come to how many times or how often this goes on is that website, mappingpoliceviolence.org.
Chairman Jones, if I could just add one more point to what Mr. Corda just said, Michael, my good friend. Today, I had in my office a family that was in tears because they lost their loved one to the hands of police violence. These are cases I've handled over decades in which police have taken the life of a young person unjustifiably. And there is not much light of day given to those cases, unfortunately, because there was no video. But it doesn't mean the struggle isn't worthy of the attention and the quest for justice that is so necessary in this battle between the freedoms that we hold, that we cherish, and the power of the police to undermine our liberty interests. That struggle goes on every day in the courtrooms in this city. It also goes, as you well know, on the streets of Philadelphia. And to meld the two in an effective way to create this path towards justice is what CPOC will do. CPOC will provide that third eye journey for all of us to see inside the police department and allow for us to reach in and make systemic changes so that the department is finally, in the history of this city, tethered to some level of democratic accountability.
Final question I have. You represent a lot of clients, Mr. Court. How many instances has there been of alleged police brutality that was taken back because of some deal that could have been offered to minimize those kinds of abuse claims? Is that a real thing?
Not only is it a real thing, it's a common thing. And I want Paul Hetznicker to follow up on this. My area of expertise is primarily criminal defense, although I do a little civil here and there. When you talk about police misconduct and civil litigation, the go-to guy here in Philly, at least one of the top 5, it's Paul Hetznicker. So I would defer to Paul in regard to that. Paul?
Chairman Jones, the way I would respond, it's a great question, and thank you, Michael. And Michael and I, we're on the same quest with respect to the criminal cases. My experience in the past is both criminal and civil. So in the case of criminal cases, as Michael will I think, agree, oftentimes what happens is there are cover charges, what we call cover charges. So a police officer will commit an act of abuse. They charge the individual with aggravated assault. That triggers the criminal justice process. In the process of triggering the criminal justice process and charges, the defense attorney is then put in the position of having to negotiate with respect to what the charges might be or what the ultimate penalty might be. As a consequence of that, Chairman Jones, you're precisely right. What comes into play, as Michael has said, it happens all too frequently, that in fact, what's lost in the mix is the true narrative of what happened on the street, because there may not be video that vindicates the client's story. So as Michael said earlier in his testimony, it's the cop's word against the individual client's word. And then who's going to take that cop's word? Well, oftentimes it's the great expertise of Michael Cord or other defense attorneys through cross-examination, exposing the lies in the courtroom that may bring light to the truth of a particular injustice. But all far too frequently, that light of day that's often exposed, even expertly through cross-examination of the police officers in the context of the criminal case, doesn't result in a just result. It still ends up in a conviction. It still ends up in a sentence. And so this is a battle that goes on all the time. And this is where the power of the police to shape the narrative on the street and then duplicate that in the courtroom has been undermined by that third eye. We need the assistance of CPOC to get access to all the tools to basically look very carefully at the systemic effort to, for example, on the stop and frisk in the Bailey litigation is a perfect example. 2011, 2010, there were 253,000 car stops. Of those 253,000, 72% of the people stopped were African American. 72%. 2015, 2016, it was 80%. So we don't see a change based on just litigation. Litigation is an important part of this. We need civilian oversight. We need a democratic process in which accountability of that police department's long systemic efforts and Michael Cord's mention of this website is an excellent first step. That's an example of looking for the data that says people don't need to be lost in this mix of statistics and undermined by the efforts by the police. We can track them, as certainly as the Public Defender's Office has established. We can track them. There's a way to create accountability. We need that tracking to meld with authority, and democratic authority is what's represented in CPOC.
Well, I could sit here and listen to the two of you for the rest of the afternoon and learn every step of the way. But I have to end this portion of the testimony in order to allow for public comment. And so I appreciate what you've shared today. And I'm going to take you up. I'm going to bring my colleagues. We're going to invade your class, Professor. So you'll see us. And thank you both for your testimony.
Chairman Jones, thank you very much for having me today. It's an honor to appear in front of you again. Unfortunately, my camera didn't work, so you couldn't see me face to face. I hope I have the opportunity to see you face to face at some point in the future and express my gratitude for having this opportunity to take the fight from the courtroom back here into City Council in the full light of day, so that some of my insights might shape and have some impact on what goes on in the future.
And as a follow-up to what Paul Hessnicker said, I want to thank, and on behalf of Paul and also our comrade and ally, Riley Ross, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly want to thank President Darrell Clark. In addition, I want to thank City Council members. I was going through a list of each one, but I figured I might forget somebody's name and they might get upset. So I'll just say all the council members. But certainly, last but not least, Samantha Williams, as I pointed out at the outset, really instrumental in making this thing work. So we thank her, we thank you, we thank everybody involved. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to take a brief break. We are not going to log off. We're going to allow the stenographer to take a break, and we're going to reconvene at 1:45 p.m. So thank you all. so very much. This is a continuation of the Committee of the Whole. This is a public hearing to review resolutions number 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, 210103, and bill number 210074. Welcome back. And we will now open up for public comment. And in that section, we have people teed up. Modesto, who do we have?
Wenda, who was our first participant?
The first person you have is Duncan Gromko.
Hi, this is Duncan. Can you hear me? Shall I start?
Yes, we can. Would you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony? I should tell everyone that we have a 3-minute limit, and at the 30 seconds before the conclusion, you should hear a timer to alert you to conclude your comments. Thank you so much. Please begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Duncan Gromko. I'm a resident of Philly, and I'm a member of Democratic Socialists of America and Reclaim Philadelphia. Last year, Philly police killed Walter Wallace Jr. When I went to peacefully protest this violence. Philly police beat me up and then arrested me on false charges. I spoke with a lawyer about suing the department, and they told me there's basically zero chance of winning such a case because of the impunity that the PPD operates under. Commissioner Outlaw ordered attacks on Philly residents with tear gas and other weapons this past summer, and despite the controller's report finding a, quote, failure of leadership, Outlaw still has her job. From top to bottom, Philly cops think they can get away with anything, and they're right. If a Citizens Police Oversight Commission is created, it needs to have real power to hold police accountable when they commit crimes and abuse their power. A CPOC should have community organizations decide the board members. CPOC should be funded by 3% of the PPD's budget. CPOC should implement progressive fines for police officers that fail to comply, paid for by the FOP or the individual officer, not taxpayers. CPOC should have the authority to hire and hire the police commissioner, and CPOC should have no current or former cops on the board. Long term, we need to break the political power of the FOP by defunding the police. Our city's public services have been underfunded for decades, and now COVID has hurt them even further, and we must defund the police and reinvest in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Modesto, who's next?
The next person you have is Martha Guttenberg.
Ms. Guttenberg, are you there?
Yes, thank you for taking my call. My name is Marta Guttenberg. I'm a resident of Philadelphia. I'm speaking only for myself, although I do belong to some of the organizations that have already spoken to you today. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. The police have told us that they don't want oversight. They want special pay for wearing their body cameras. They are accustomed to this culture of impunity. They are currently in the catbird seat, and they'll do just about anything to prevent oversight. For example, as you probably know, the FOP found an oppositional DA candidate and then told its members to switch their party registration to Democrat so they could vote against Larry Krasner in the primary election tomorrow. They're not above any sort of crooked measures to keep their favored position. That is why we need a fully funded and powerful civilian police oversight committee. The mayor has shown us that he is not a good judge of character, and for that reason I urge that the mayor have no input on the selection of members of the commission. These should be people who truly represent the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate your patience. Samantha, who's next?
Maria Powell. Maria's not on the line. The next person we have is Tamara.
Okay. Tamara Anderson.
Hello. I'm Tamara Anderson, and I am calling in response to the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, Ordinance 210074. The language of the bill does very little to respond to bad cops or disciplinary action due to the Power Protection from Act 111. In 2015, in response to the stop and frisk policies and over-policing and the murder of Michael Brown, the MLK Dare Table was established in Philadelphia, a coalition of local educational, social, and racial justice groups. And one of the demands was to have a police oversight commission. Since then, we have had Walter Wallace, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and countless other cases of murder, brutality, and harassment at the hands of police. If City Council does pass this bill, Reclaim Philadelphia demands the following: that there's some sort of community participation as far as the selection of members, that it is funded by 3% of the Philadelphia Police Department's budget, that there are fines that are applied when after the first offense, and those fines must be paid by the Fraternal Order of Police and not by taxpayer dollars. They also demand that the Citizens Police Oversight Commission have the authority to hire and fire the police commissioner, and that there be no former or current cops at all on the board. But in a more perfect world, I ask that the city and city council demonstrate the political will to provide increased dollars towards mental health services, increased dollars towards after-school programs, actual reparations for victims of police misconduct, like the John Birch Reparation Act.
We want it there.
And increased employment pathways that pay more than a living wage. Because the truth is, policing will never be the answer to increase safety in our communities, because history and practice prove this time and time again. Abolition is the only pathway to achieve the communities that we all deserve and want. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. I got to check every now and then. Thank you, Member Richardson. Who do we have next to testify?
Kitty Height.
Ms. Height, are you available?
Kitty's not on the line.
Okay. Yaya Robinson.
Jaja, please. Yes. My name is
thank
Jaja
you
Robinson.
for your patience.
Thank you. My name is Jaja Robinson. I'm with Socialist Alternatives and Black Alliance for Peace. If anyone's interested in what I have to say or what we're saying, Socialist Alternative will be holding a public meeting on May 27th at 7 p.m. You can find it on their Facebook page, Socialist Alternative Philadelphia. But what I personally have to say is, as a black male from North Philadelphia, I could offer any amalgamation of anecdotes to explain why the current state of policing is that of a sewage pipe. But I really have no desire for the white guilt tears, so I'm just going to have statistics play a role in enforcing the argument for community control of the police. The imbalance of treatment towards black citizens at the hands of the officers of the law has remained prominent for decades. But I'm gonna be using statistics from the past 10 years. Since 2014, the Philadelphia Police Department has reported the amount of pedestrian and traffic stops per 1,000 residents. Of the three groups, white, Hispanic, and black residents are shown to be 3 times more likely to be stopped by the police in comparison to white residents. These constant stop and frisk examples are proven to be purposeless, as only about 1 in 8 searches of black males, the demographic that is stopped at the highest rate, tends to be successful with finding contraband on this person. Not only are they purposeless, but they open the door for the harassment and abuse of disproportionate amount of poor and black citizens nationwide. Since 2013, 3,308 charges were thrown upon Philadelphia police officers. Of those 3,308, only 59 were guilty of the charges, which is much less than 2%. And on a more national scale, the Associated Press revealed approximately that 1,000 officers, quote unquote, lost their badges in a 6-year period for sex-related crimes. The accountability is non-existent, and that's not even mentioning the murders, the planting of contraband, and the other crooked rituals of the daily cop. I personally envision a world without police. The sole function of the police is to protect private property owned by the capitalist ruling class and maintain the oppression and forced labor of the black community via mass incarceration. But since the term abolish the police tends to deafen the average person with its radical tones, with that knowledge, I recognize the necessity of democratic community control of the police, a grasp on policing that enables the community, aka the working class, with the ability to hire and fire cops, demilitarize the precincts, and redistribute the bloated funds into education, healthcare, and other rights. Hopefully, as we shift towards this model and gradually witness the decrease in violent crime while the quality of life rises, only then will people start to recognize the police as a mere tool for the fascist and destructive ruling class. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaja, for your testimony. I see the president has rejoined us, so I shall surrender the mic. Oh, keep going. Okay. All right. Who do we have next, Ms. Williams?
Tamar Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here. How are you?
I'm good. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Tamar Wilson. Thank you for allowing me to speak, sir. I am an organizer with the Philadelphia branch of Socialist Alternative, a group that helps working class communities fight for what they need. And I think that we should be clear about a few things. The CPOC is being created in the wake of its insufficient predecessor, the Police Advisory Commission. As of now, while I have heard City Council obliquely address the failures of the PAC, there hasn't been sufficient discussion on how the CPOC will be different on issues of funding sources, selection, and an understanding of why a body like the Citizens Police Oversight Commission is needed. On this call, I have heard what amounts to blatant pro-police propaganda with little to no acknowledgement about how police are used to protect a system that reserves for the few what it steals from the many. Where the role police play in practices, as storybook portrayed on this call by some, they wouldn't have perpetrated the MOVE bombing in this very city in 1985 or sparked the largest social movement in this country's history just last year. This is why focusing on one individual's office character is irrelevant. We need to be having discussions in the communities about what they should be doing, what their priorities and standards are. As of now, City Council's sentiment seems to be let experienced law enforcement professionals, prosecutors, CEOs, or already those steeped in historically racist and classist institutions to serve as leaders on this body, but no room for working people. The current selection process for CPOC allows City Council and the mayor to choose the selection panel with no oversight for this oversight board, right? As opposed to it being democratically elected from our neighborhoods. And according to the testimony, even prioritize law enforcement officers to serve on the body. It cannot be a mayor and city council appointed body that doesn't even have the ability to hire fire cops or negotiate with the FOP and yet also be representative as community oversight. Why should the citizens of Philadelphia, namely the city's black population, which has endured this very body and its mayor, giving the police order to kennel and gas peaceful and terrorize peaceful protesters last year, which has endured decades of police occupation and terrorism and acts both egregious and innocuous, trust a body that is not democratically elected by them, that relentlessly fights to dictate to police their methods of police accountability and not the other way around. That's what we need. Socialist Alternative will be hosting a public meeting on our neighborhoods on May 27th at 7 p.m. You can check out Socialist PHL on Twitter to discuss what we need from we're going to hear from our communities on what keeps them safe, on the role police should be serving in our communities, the actions that they think are acceptable, right? City Council should also host these similar meetings. We demand nothing less than full community control over our police forces, and the right tools with CPOC will help us achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Who's next, Samantha?
Leroy Forney.
Opportunity. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Excuse me, can you state your name for the record and then begin your testimony?
My name is Leroy Forney. I'm retired and I live on Chestnut Street in Center City. I care deeply about the safety of my community and the integrity of the police force that protects me. For these reasons, I am wholly and enthusiastically in favor of a strong Citizens Police Oversight Commission. But a total emphasis on resolving complaints and on discipline, such as the current legislation provides, may have some unintended consequences. Now, in no way do I wish to reduce the investigatory or disciplinary power of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, but I also believe it's important to investigate, recognize, and reward examples of outstanding policing. This can easily be done with a small fraction of the resources and powers already planned within the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. Such a program to recognize excellence in policing can provide the means of expressing community gratitude and support for above-the-line-of-duty actions that save lives and promote community safety. Most police oversight only stresses this discipline, removing bad apples, punishing unacceptable activity. An unintended result of this all-stick and no-carrot approach is to demoralize many police officers and the police force. This shows up in the number of officers choosing to leave the police force and may be part of the decrease that we've seen in the number of new applicants for police, which has recently been reported. In the words of one detective, why would you want to join something where people hate you and then go out there and put your lives on the line? Let's be specific. The Inquirer reported that in the first third of 2020, 13 officers stated their intention to retire within 4 years. This year, 2021, that number is 79, 6 times as many impending retirements. 6 times as many retirements this year. So let me summarize. Recognition of exceptional police performance by the Citizens Police Oversight Commission can reward the kind of policing we all desire and demand. It will improve safety in my community, and it will restore confidence that the police are working on our behalf. It will improve police morale and performance and restore community trust. Thank you for your time, your interest, and your patience.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Who do we have next, Ms. Williams?
Anna Cherniowski.
Hi, I'm here. Hello.
How are you? Good afternoon. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Yes, thank you, council people and everyone else. My name is Anna Cherniowski. This is something that's been important to me my whole life. When I was 16, 2 friends and I were assaulted at gunpoint in a village playground. My male friend was tied up and I was raped. 2 friends went to the police, but I went home. After 1 a.m., a police officer showed up ringing bells. He told me they had suspects in custody. and that he had a daughter, wouldn't want to see her hurt by these guys, would I? He lied to me, and these lies led me to the hospital where after rape procedure, I was alone with an officer who asked why I was in the park and why I was wearing a short skirt. He told me he was committing a crime withholding evidence. When I stated I wanted to talk to someone else, he looked at his wingtips and at me as like he'd done this before and said, "There is no one else." I didn't know the worst. The police had physically assaulted my friend, a 16-year-old black guy with a limp from previous trauma, to get my address. When I learned that, my heart was in my throat, and I had to do something. But we quickly learned there are no viable avenues to hold these criminal cops accountable. I will no longer try to figure out or speculate why the cops treat us like criminals. It does not matter. There is no excuse or justification for brutalizing survivors. Decades have passed, and police accountability is still elusive. Over and over to begin to even start to wake up. Without divesting from policing and incarceration to create a safer world, I'll invest in healing mode that should be in the past. It sounds good, but that involves community participation, engaging with community organizations as an independent form of police is paid for by the police budget and institutes fines on don't comply. It will be actual body again. So let's make the work you put in work and see that incorporates these aspects. Thank you.
I'm so sorry you went through that, but thank you for sharing it with all of us today. Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Member Gim.
Thank you so much. And I just also wanted to express how difficult it was for you to testify about this, even though it happened however long ago that it happened. But we're carrying your story with us as we install this Oversight Commission, and really appreciate your time to take the testimony. And if you have if it's written down anywhere, Council Chair, if there's an opportunity to share it with the rest of Council, I think it's important to hear. But thank you very much to this witness.
Thank you, Member Gim. Heartfelt. Ms. Williams, do we have one more?
Yes, Christopher Romano.
Hello.
Christopher Romano.
Yes, my name is Christopher Romano, and I'm a member of Philly DSA, and my wife and I, and friends, are survivors of police brutality. I know far too many people that are. Let's be honest here. The FOP is too strong of a force for a community-led oversight committee to be fully effective. Act 111 also still exists as it was written during the 60s. Even so, 79% of voters in November thought it was a good idea to form the CPOC. We owe it to them to make it as strong as possible. This is a decent bill, but if we do not strengthen it, the community and the police will think we came up with a compromise. It's never been the case in the history of these oversight boards across our country. Police are incapable of holding themselves accountable. There is a false bad apples narrative since the issues at hand require a systematic change. We must create a CPOC that keeps police, both current and former, off the staff, to not intimidate or improperly influence the work as police are known to do. We must select individuals that represent the interests of the people most severely impacted by police violence. The CPOC must be funded by the Philadelphia Police Department budget and not from other reallocated government funds. The demands of the CPOC must not be ignored by anyone on the force. If they do so, financial penalties should be levied against them and come directly out of the FOP or pension funds, and these penalties must be increased progressively. I support the demands listed and submitted to you by Reclaim Philadelphia. And in light of the relative strength of the CPOC versus the FOP, I ask you consider the following. Abolish the FOP. Police unions are not part of the fight for workers' rights. shift funding priorities from police to community health and well-being, fire all cops with ties or sympathies to white supremacist groups, institute zero budget balancing for all future police budget talks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else to testify? Seeing none, this concludes the public hearing of City Council Committee of the Whole on resolutions number 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, 210103, and bill number 210074. I yield the mic at this time to Council President Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did a great job. Appreciate it. All our witnesses did a good job. We thank them for their very significant input. We ask all the individuals who have called in to please disconnect so we can proceed with our public meeting. Okay, we will now convene the public meeting to consider the actions to be taken on resolutions 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, 210103, and bill number 210074. Mr. Christmas, please call the roll to take attendance. Members that are present, please indicate that they are so. Mr. Christmas, please call the roll.
Council Lady Bass.
Present.
Council Lady Brooks.
Present.
Councilman Dom.
Present.
Council Lady Godier.
Present.
Council Lady Gilmore Richardson.
Present.
Councilman Green.
Present.
Council Lady Gim.
I am present.
Councilman Heenan. Councilman Johnson. Councilman Jones.
Present.
Councilman O'Neill.
Present, and as a heads up to the President, I will be voting no on the bill.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilman Johnson, I have you.
Thank you.
Councilman O, please. Council Lady Parker.
Present, Mr. President.
Council Lady Quinona Sanchez. Councilman Squilla. Present. Councilman, thank you, Councilman. Councilman Thomas.
Good afternoon, President.
Councilman Clark.
Present. Thank you. As the quorum of the committee has been established, and we will now begin our public meeting. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on resolutions number 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, and 210103.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the resolutions numbers 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, and 210103 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that the resolutions number 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, and 210103 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor on the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, ayes have it. And the motion carries. Resolutions number 210098, 210099, 210100, 210101, 210102, 210103 will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jones for a motion on bill number 210074.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to offer an amendment to bill number 210074. A copy of this amendment has been circulated to members of council, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that bill number 210074 be amended. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. And the motion carries. The amendment to bill number 210074 is adopted. Chair again recognizes Councilmember Jones for a motion on bill number 210074 as amended.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I move that bill number 210074 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to offer first reading of this bill at our next session of council.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 210074, as amended, will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation and a suspension of the rules to allow first reading at the next session of council. This concludes the business before the council committee of the whole today.
Mr. President, respectfully, could you just list my vote as no?
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, I understand. Let the reflect again for the record that Councilman O'Neill is voting nay on bill number 210074 out of committee. This concludes the business before the council committee of the whole today. Thank you all very much for your attendance. And again, please be safe.
Thank you and congratulations, Councilman Jones. Thanks for all of your hard work.
Thank you to you all for your support, and this is a victory for us all. Thank you.
Congratulations. This is
Thank
huge.
you all. Have a good day.